Yo, what is going on, fight fans? It's officially upon us. It's another UFC fight week for us, and we are taking place here, debuting. Actually, not debuting. Sorry, but we are back in the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, over there in Saudi Arabia in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and this card will be taking place over there. Early card, and I honestly want to come out and say it first. I apologize if I don't have like as much pizzazz, energy, and enthusiasm, passion, whatever. Because whether you guys like it or not, I don't know. Like the passion and energy behind my conversations, talking throughout the whole video to bring excitement and spunk it up, spice it up. It might not be there for this episode because at the time of this recording, it's like 3, 4 a.m. where I'm at. But the grind must continue. I'm trying to push out this content for you guys, for those of you that have been watching and enjoying and cashing in and hitting some parlays and hitting green with me on my picks. This is for you guys. And like I said, the grind doesn't stop. But we had some, personal matters, some personal life issues, outside of the content creation and podcast, video making world. And I don't normally like to share my personal life on here with you guys because, like I said, it's personal. But I had a family member of mine, let's just say that a close family member of mine in the hospital with a little bit of a health scare. They're going to be all right as far as what we know, what it seems. So just keep them in your thoughts and prayers as I will too. And hopefully that they get through this and come out on the better side for it. But yeah, that's been one of the main issues today. My weekend had been turned into a whirlwind where I got caught up in behind. I knew this car was out for weeks now, and it was announced for a while. So I could have done a better job for you guys and got it out in the middle of the week, during the week. That's my fault for procrastinating and coming out with this episode last second. I also had, a close friend of mine come in from out of town and he's visiting for a couple of days and into the weekend. So we've been making plans, hanging out and doing stuff as well. So much going on, but hey, no excuses. The grind still continues. We keep moving forward and progressing forward. But enough me rambling on and on about that. It's time to move on to the fight card. Like I said, now this is going to be an early card that is debuting, or I keep saying debuting, sorry, not debuting, but an early card taking place at 10 a.m. my local time, 9 a.m. if you're Pacific time, and 12 p.m. if you're on the East Coast as well, or maybe it's 1 p.m. I have to double check on that, but I think it's around noon to p.m. is the start time for your East Coast people here. And the reason for this early start time is because it's taking place over there in Abu Dhabi, and which is kind of ironic and funny because last weekend we just had a card that took place overseas in the UK, over there in Manchester, England, and they had to stay up, for the main card that started at 3 a.m. and ended at like 6, 7 a.m., which is absolutely brutal and crazy for those local fans over there. Sorry, apologize to you fight fans that are over there in England and the UK. Sucks to suck, sucks to be you. It's just crazy how, for some reason, the company UFC Dana White can't make a card that is catered to their local time and adjust for that, but they have no problem turning around the week later and having a perfect start time for, the local area over there in Abu Dhabi. But hey, it is what it is. But yeah, enough of me rambling on here in this intro. Also, don't forget, 250 subscribers. We have that giveaway going on, and at 300 subscribers, we have the UFC 300 poster giveaway. So subscribe and follow me either on TikTok or Instagram. Starting to get more active there. I have a bunch of reels cooked up and planned up. I gotta be better about not procrastinating on content or pushing it out so late and being ahead of the times with it. But hey, that's just me, and we'll try our best to be better about that. But like I said, let's dive into the first fight on the card of the night, or of the day, I guess I should say, since it's starting early here. Alrighty, so we got taking on here in what is going to be the middleweight division. We got Sedriques Dumas versus Denis. I think it's pronounced Denis. Tiuliulin. I don't even know. I'm not gonna even force myself to pronounce that name again. Denis, if you ever watch this, bro, apologize to you again. You guys know here on the show, that's my biggest pet peeve, is butchering people's names. I try my best, but I think it's Tiuliulin from what I've heard or what I remember. So Denis Tiuliulin is what we're gonna go with. I'm familiar with this guy because he fought one of my favorite fighters right now at the moment, CLD. So, and which he came out victorious, unlike last week against RoboCop, which is unfortunate. But hey, learning lesson for my boy CLD. We bounce back, we move forward, get back in the gym. Got some work to do. Future champ. Every Cage Warriors champ has had a taste of the belt or held the belt at some point in their career, in their UFC career. So I don't see anything different. Bright future for CLD. Don't worry about it. We move forward. But anyway, Sedriques Dumas taking on Denis Tiuliulin. Now, when I first saw this to start off the fight card, it didn't really move me or shake me. I was like, it's a whatever fight. But the closer I looked into it, I'm kind of a little bit intrigued because I'm more intrigued on the Sedriques Dumas side because I'm not really tapped in or tuned into the Tiuliulin side as far as anything goes. From what I know, I mean, the dude's 10-9. That's his record so far in his professional career in totality. But as far as the UFC, he's only been with the company for about 5 fights now. Is what he's been with the company. So a little less than half of his career. I mean, a quarter of his career has been up in the UFC promotion, and it could be coming fairly to a quick halt and a quick end soon. He might get dropped down to the PFL, whoever picks him up, or maybe he goes back to regionals where he was fighting. He fought through various different regionals, and he had a decent record before entering the UFC. Nothing to write home about, nothing crazy. I mean, he did have five losses coming in, and they were all finishes except 2 of them. He lost by split decision, so those could have gone either way. But ever since he stepped foot into the UFC promotion and with the company, he is a whopping 1-4 and is currently on a big skid right now. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, all by way of finish. All his losses in the UFC have been by way of finish. He was submitted in his UFC debut. His only lone UFC win is against Jamie Pickett, who's, I guess you could argue and say he's a can. He knocked him out. And then he's gone on the 3-fight losing streak where he's been submitted by the Iron Turtle. I think it's his nickname, Jung Young Park. And then he was knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez and knocked out by Christian Lee Duncan. Both great fighters. All 3 great fighters to, get finished by. Can't knock it, but hey, at some point, you got to bounce back. This is also a 36-year-old fighter, creeping into that late 30 stage. That's when you start teetering and falling off. But the reason why I'm not really checked out looking Denis Tiuliulin's way is what I mentioned before. He's pretty much, on trajectory to be a can at this point, and this could possibly be his last fight with the UFC company. I'm not sure what his contract looked like, but as far as I know, it doesn't really matter what your contract is because your contract can be null and void if you get cut. So, and it's looked like he's trending that way. If he does lose the fight, most likely will. 4-fight losing streak. You're 1-4 or going to be 1-5 with the company. It's hard to recoup and bounce back from that. Like, that's a dramatic fall off unless he somehow sways and convinces Dana White and the company to bring him back, and he goes on like a 5 to 7 win streak. He might have the possibility of salvaging his career, but at 36 years old, that's at the point of no return. But the reason why this intrigued me with the Sedriques, I can't even speak, Sedriques Dumas side is because this guy is a conflicting fighter, a very interesting fighter. I know he's 9-2, which is funny for me to say this, and you guys are going to have a weird reaction, but from what I've watched on his recent fights and his fight tape, I think I've watched about his last 2 fights. I got to go back and check. I know I've watched 2 to 3 of his fights in his career live, or not in arena, but live on air on TV when he has fought on some clear cards. And I don't know what to make of this guy. I really don't know what to make of Sedriques Dumas, is because he shows glimpses of great potential that's there, but he's also a guy who looks like he just quits and gives up a lot in moments that don't go his way. Like, he doesn't have the mental chops for this, which is kind of funny because with all the face tattoos and the crazy look that he's got going on, you would think this guy is a cold-blooded threat and like a crazy madman. It's almost like the far opposite of that. I've seen times where he gets derailed and dejected and down on himself really quickly, and he just mentally checks out of fights, which is not a good thing, not a beautiful thing to do or have happen to you. So That was weird. But yeah, he gets just mentally derailed and dejected and down on himself, and he just checks out of fights early. Whereas if he just chomped down, locked in and focused and honed in on his craft and his skills, and just threw all the mental challenges aside and just hones in on his craft when fighting, and he could be a really really good fighter. He has solid potential. He has decent potential. I don't know about championship or title belt holder potential with the middleweight division at 185 because that's a deep rabbit hole. That's a very highly contested division with a lot of fighters on their way out at the top spot. So maybe it opens up for him. Like maybe he can sniff or be close to a ranking. But I don't know what to, like I said, I don't know what to make this guy. Like he's been in with the company for 5 fights now as well. Yeah, 5 fights. So same as Denis Tiuliulin. And he is, I mean, he's had a better UFC career than Tiuliulin, where he has a 3-2 record, and his only 2 losses ever in his career have come in the UFC, and he's coming off of a loss in his last fight back in March 30th of this year on the UFC Fight Night, where Blanchfield fought Manon Furio, and she got beat. I don't know. I think that was when I don't think she got knocked out. I think she just lost by decision. I think Furio manhandled. Yeah, unanimous decision in a 5-round fight, which was crazy. It was a 50-45 across the board. I didn't see it that way. I guess who knows, but that's nor here or there. That's a whole different conversation. That's completely sidetracking us from the current card that's going on. So, but yeah, Sedriques Dumas 3-2 in his UFC career. His short and young. Hopefully, he has a long future with the company, but he's been submitted by Josh Fremd, which is kind of alarming. When you see that, you're like, it's not a good look. I mean, Josh Fremd early on was looking solid, but since then, I'm not too highly on him. I mean, he's a decent fighter. He can do some things, but he's not like over the top, otherworldly to, I mean, when you, like I said, when you look at a submission loss to him, I mean, that's his strength of his, fighting aspects is the ground game. And Sedriques Dumas he's decent on the ground game. I mean, he has 2 wins by submission. He's 2-1, so he's got a positive record. He has something going for him. And then his last fight, he got knocked out by Nursultan Ruziboev, which, I mean, that is a respective knockout. But Ruziboev recently, I mean, he was on a 4-fight win streak before he ran into Joaquin Buckley, and I had Ruziboev winning that. I was completely shocked when Joaquin Buckley just dominated him to an easy unanimous decision. And he had that hometown crowd buff behind him. Joaquin Buckley is trending upward now that he's switched up to the 185 division. And he could be tasting the rankings here pretty soon. And so far, what we've seen in the 185 division, he's looking like the mix of a fighter that could be a title contender. And I don't know about a title holder. But yeah, I thought I had Ruziboev on my parlay and my picks on that one to beat Joaquin Buckley. I guess I just underestimated Joaquin Buckley, and I also underestimated that Louisville hometown crowd buff. So it was shocking to see Ruziboev get walked down like that and absolutely pieced up and dominated. And I believe, but Ruziboev claims that he got injured in that fight. I don't know what happened, but I mean, hey, in the fight business, you can't make excuses. I mean, what's done is done. It's been there, done that. So, but yeah, he got knocked out by Ruziboev, which was like, okay, somewhat semi-respectable. And then his 3 victories, his debut in the Contender Series, he won by submission. And then he unanimously beat Cody Brundage and Abu Azatar. So it's like his victories aren't the greatest, and his losses aren't the greatest besides Ruziboev. So it's a little alarming here. It's like you don't know what you're going to get with this Dumas guy. Like I said, roller coaster, despite what his record looked like and says. As far as being in the UFC, he's just been up and down. And I mean, both of these fighters are evenly matched up. We got the same height, obviously same weight class in 185 middleweight division. And the only thing going for Dumas in this matchup, when we size him up, I mean, he has an 8-year age gap, 8-year difference. That's got the age advantage going for him, youth. And then he's also got the 2-inch reach advantage, which is I mean, these dimensions, like these measurements are so weird when I look at them because, like, sometimes I wonder how can you have like a 1 inch height difference, but then you have like a 2, 3 inch reach difference? It's just weird genetic makeup and how that works. But both guys orthodox. Sedriques Dumas, I mean, see, he doesn't even throw with volume. He's only landing barely cracking 2 strikes per minute landed. And I mean, he's accurate with them. So I mean, if it's working, I mean, low volume, high accuracy is sometimes a way to go because when you throw high volume, you're gonna have low accuracy. It's just the way it is, just opposite ends of metrics. And then you got Denis Tiuliulin, who is landing 4.5 strikes per minute. I round up, so I'm just gonna say 5. Not as accurate, but when you're throwing with that volume and you're relatively close in accuracy, that's a problem, right? So Denis Tiuliulin can scrap and throw hands. He just doesn't have the chin to hold himself up and scrap and throw hands. He's on back-to-back knockout losses. I mean, the age is showing, and that's what kind of scares me is Denis Tiuliulin. If he gets past like a round and a half, which is what I believe this round total rounds odds is projected, it's favored to go over 1.5 rounds, 1.5. I mean, if his chin can hold up early on and survive, he's a live dog, especially with the guy with Sedriques Dumas, which is scaring me, warranting this minus 240 chalk price that Dumas is laying, which is kind of crazy. I can't really lay that much chalk, but if I were to lean some way in this fight, it'll probably go that way just because he can win on the scorecards. I mean, he's done it twice now in his career. He's won by decision. And I mean, unless he's absolutely getting pieced up and walked down and just dominated by Denis Tiuliulin, which I highly doubt or expect to see that happening, he's most likely going to win on the scorecards because, like, who the judges and the company really want to give it to, especially if this guy can get back on the win track and build up some confidence for himself, which is pretty good. They fed him a can for a reason, right? So they believe this Dumas kid can be something. But I just don't like the volume that he's throwing, despite it being accurate. I mean, he has decent takedown volume. He doesn't really try to shoot for it as much, but when he does, it's there. He, can land the takedown. In Denis Tiuliulin, I mean, he's not the greatest takedown defense guy from what I've seen and what I know. So it's like I don't know. I kind of want to stay away from this fight, but my official pick on this fight is Sedriques Dumas by victory money line is probably the safest way to play it. Throw it in your parlays, I guess. I wouldn't be too highly confident in it being a parlay piece. I also don't mind, even though the odds, they favor and are leaning towards over 1.5 rounds. If it does go the distance, Sedriques Dumas should probably win by, decision. But I could see Sedriques Dumas with a live finish in late rounds 2 or 3 is what I would bet if you can get like a double chance on rounds on your sports book. I know DK offers it. I don't know how he's gonna get the finish. I mean, Sedriques Dumas can land, and he's not really too much of a heavy hitter. He has decent hands. He doesn't have heavy hands that land like can completely knock somebody's chin off and clip them. I mean, he throws in barrage in terms of like if he can land combos. Maybe he hits Denis with a decent body shot that drops him and just clips him in ground and pounds from there. But yeah, I mean, Denis Tiuliulin, he's literally 0-4 by sub. So his ground game is absolutely trash and awful. It's more of a stand-up game. I mean, he's 9-3 by knockout. So I think if Sedriques Dumas was smart, I mean, he does have a submission victory already before, so why not lock up another one? That looks like a clear, easy path to victory for me or for him here that I see. So yeah, I'll take Sedriques Dumas by a late ITD sprinkle, but I'm just going to play it safe on the money line. Yeah, we move on to the next fight. Alrighty, here, next fight. Now, this is the fight that really caught my eye, and rightfully so because it's with the betting odds that really intrigued me, and it's actually moved down towards Rolando Bedoya a lot, like drastically. And I could speculate, like before his fight, he might even move into the trajectory of the favorite on this fight. Now, Jai Herbert is another guy that I have been following closely since, he started this MMA stuff. He was on the regional scene with Cage Warriors over there in England. He was coming up at around the same time as Lerone Murphy, um, and Christian Leroy Duncan. Even though he's 36, he came up into the company roughly around, all three of them roughly came around in at the same time closely. And Jai Herbert's UFC career hasn't been too nice of him to him, and not really that kind, which is sad to see for a guy that looks so promising and looks so good in Cage Warriors and so dominant. I liked his fighting style. I like what I saw on tape. I thought he was gonna have a highly touted, UFC career, MMA career. It just never came to fruition, never happened. And he's on potential watch of possibly getting dropped from the company and might have to go back to regionals, or maybe he could find success in the PFL or one championship or something like that somewhere. And I wouldn't doubt that he does find success with his veteranship, his savviness, his experience that could carry over from Cage Warriors to somewhere else. But yeah, like I said, the UFC hasn't panned out for him or been kind at all. So right now, currently in the UFC, he has a 2-4-1 record. The draw he had is against Ludovic Klein, a guy that I have a hard time handicapping. I mean, one of the fighters when betting on or against kind of pisses me off because it's just hard to get a read on Ludovic Klein or what to expect from him. There's times where it's like, I don't know, he's just frustrating to watch, but he's found his rhythm, he's found his groove. 22-4-1, 9-1 by knockout, 8-2 by sub, and he's currently on a 3-fight win streak. Well, technically on a 5-fight win streak. Yeah, he's found his groove and rhythm. So, I mean, Jai Herbert at least getting somewhat a decent recognition, positive outcome. I mean, he didn't lose to Ludovic Klein, so to push him to a draw is something respectable to take note there. I mean, he's 4 losses in the UFC, so he's been with the company for 7 fights now, and yeah, 2-4-1 is not good in your 7-fight career here with the company. And again, I didn't realize how much older he was. I thought he was still freshly like in his late 20s, early 30s. So I feel like this dude is, not aging the greatest because of what's going on to him. But yeah, I mean, he's been knocked out on his UFC debut to Francisco Trinaldo. I don't even think he's with the company. That was back in 2020 during the dark COVID days. And then he comes in later, basically a year later, to try and readjust. And he gets submitted by Renato Moicano. Show me the money, baby. He can't afford to lose. He got submitted by him. So back-to-back finishes. And then he bounces back later that year, a couple months later that year, with a knockout of his own against Kama Worthy. And a can who's most likely not with the company anymore. Then he gets absolutely chinned and clipped and destroyed. His face got blown off by Ilia Topuria, which, see where Ilia Topuria is now in this, weight class, in this weight division for 155 lightweight. Well, I mean, Ilia Topuria has now dropped down to 145. So, but yeah, he got his chin absolutely blasted off. And that's a respectable loss against now the current champ. And then he has a unanimous decision against Kyle Nelson, who, again, not the greatest. And so, I mean, his only positive outcome so far in his UFC career is basically a draw with Ludovic Klein. And he has a unanimous decision loss against Farid Ziam, which right now Farid Ziam is trajectorying actually fairly decent, pretty nicely. 15-4, 5-0 by knockout, 4-3 by sub. So, I mean, the ground game's his weakness, but I mean, he has some respectable win. I mean, he just came off a win against Claudio Puelles, and that's a nice solid win. And he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights. He got submitted by T-Rex, Terrence McKinney, which is kind of embarrassing. Hey, but it is. Anything can happen in this fight game and fight business. So that kind of alarms me, even though Jai Herbert has, despite an overall decent record, that's mostly kind of carried by his regional scene days. But yeah, since then, entering the UFC, not really pretty thing to see. But yeah, he's taking on Rolando Bedoya with a 14-3 record himself, which is, quite pretty impressive despite what's going on with Rolando Bedoya. Which is why when I looked at this fight, the odds caught my eye because I was first leaning towards Jai Herbert. I mean, I think he opened up at like minus 150 at one point, pretty high, and now he's currently dropped all the way, damn near half that, to minus 125. And Rolando Bedoya, I mean, he has a 14-3 record, a solid overall record. But if you take a close look here, he's only been with the UFC company for 2 fights now. So has a short, hopefully long journey ahead of him in the UFC company. But so far, early on in his UFC career, it hasn't been treating him too nicely or too kindly either. He, like I said, only has 2 fights in the company, so still young and early on into his career. But he's 0-2 with the UFC. So he's kind of down bad right now. I wouldn't say, I mean, if he loses this fight, he's definitely on, getting dropped watch. And it's looking scary for him. It's looking grim. It's looking like he was going to get, eliminated or cut from the roster. So he has to drastically turn it around and make things happen here. But yeah, I mean, he's lost a split decision to Chaos Carl Williams, which is, a respectable loss, and despite, it went to split, so that's impressive in itself. And then he lost unanimously to Song Kinan, which is like, we're struggling with them as a 27, 26-year-old kid. We're struggling, with an older gentleman. I mean, Song Kinan, he's fighting at a Kill Cliff, which is a great, fight team, but an older guy who, has an impressive finish rate, an impressive record, which is respectable. It's like, it's one of those fights that they kind of feed you early on in your career to see if you can handle it and take advantage of the moment and seize the moment, and he didn't. So, and the thing that alarms me both too about this fight, there's a lot of, not hypotheticals, there's a lot of unexpected expectations here because both guys haven't fought in literally over a year. So the last fight for Bedoya was roughly a year ago around this time, August 26th. And Jai Herbert also hasn't, fought in a good minute too. I believe hasn't fought since July of last year. I want to say whenever the last England card was last year. Yeah, July 22nd of 2023. So these guys have pretty much both had a year off, like layover. They haven't been as active, which is weird because there's no injuries to either guy. They just had a long layover for whatever reason. They haven't been finished in their last fights, and Rolando Bedoya has not been finished in the UFC yet. He's 4-0 by knockout, 3-0 by sub. Like I said, half of his wins have come by way of finish, and his only 3 losses are 0-2 in the UFC, and then he had 1 loss early on in his young regional career from where he's coming out of. So yeah, this fight definitely caught my eye. I didn't know what to expect or make of this fight at all. I didn't know what to expect or make of this fight because I wanted to lean towards Jai Herbert, but both guys are kind of pitted in the same scenario, the same situation right now, where both guys are like pitted in the same situation or scenario now where they can't afford to lose. They're both on roster cut watch. They're in a very, very bad spot here. And they're in a very bad spot here. And it's like, who is going to bring it more? Who's going to have the more pressure riding against them and have a little bit of war of attrition to go out there and get it done? Now, I know both guys are going to be looking and going for the kill, which I could expect and see a finish here, especially with, Bedoya has never been finished, right? And Jai Herbert has been multiple times, and he's older now, mid-30s, late 30s, and he's hitting the age where his chin is finishable. He's finishable in all aspects. I think Jai Herbert's strength here is going to be the ground game. But I don't think it's going to be there because, Rolando Bedoya isn't no, slouch or trash can when it comes to the ground game. He has respectable ground game. He just doesn't, heavily involve it or use it, right? I believe at this point in both guys' careers, you got a guy who's older and trajectorying outwards versus a younger guy who's just, despite being 0-2 in his young early career, is trajectorying upwards. Because I've actually watched both of Bedoya's fights, and they were respectable scraps. I was kind of shocked that he lost the one to Chaos Williams because he was putting it on him, right? He wasn't backing down or shying away, even though he was getting busted up and clipped and chinned up, right, and pieced up. He was clawing back and throwing hands right back at him. There were some solid exchanges in the scrap between the two of them, and I was impressed to see what I saw. It was like, okay, this young kid got some game to him out of Peru. Definitely has a chin because he's been hit pretty clean on the jaw in some good spots and some good timings. And withstand it, bounce back, and kept advancing forward and closing the gap in the distance like a freaking literal zombie, right? So he just has to be more smarter. I think his defense needs to be a little bit better. And against Jai Herbert, again, a guy who doesn't really throw that much, I mean, they both have equal, significant strikes, accuracy, but he's just not. Jai Herbert's not a guy that's throwing with volume, and Jai Herbert's really not like a heavy hitter that is, despite being fairly accurate, he's just not throwing with nearly the same volume as a younger Bedoya with damn near 9 strikes landed per minute. The combinations that Bedoya throws is absolutely wicked and crazy. He tries to mix it up with that, funky, wild, kickboxing style. Jai Herbert tries to, but I'm just curious and surprised about why this is leaning towards Jai Herbert's way. And let's just get one thing straight. I was kind of shocked to see him on this card for numerous of reasons because literally the card last week and we just saw was in Manchester, England. Jai Herbert, hello, a local Englishman himself, right? Cage Warriors legend, which is taking place in that area. The company literally did not put him on the card and said, nah, he's not ready for that card or that big stage. So that was kind of like an alarming thing to see because it's almost like the company and Dana saying a big F you. I mean, he asked to be on that card and try to be on that card. He was on the last 2 England cards, I believe, the last 2 years back to back. And they told him this time around this summer, nah, homie, we good. Like, stay on that side. And they bumped him and moved him over to this card, which is not something you want to see or hear. And, I mean, the line has already been dropping and it's probably going to drop some more right before fight time, and rightfully so. I'm just surprised to see when I looked closely at this fight, like, for face value on paper before I delved into it and did my research, I was like, okay, I can see why Jai Herbert is, the favorite. But then I looked closer and I was like, this is kind of like a true 50-50 pick'em. You know what I mean? Both guys haven't had the greatest UFC career so far. One guy's younger and still fresh and early into his career. He has time to adjust and make a game plan. Both guys have a lot of pressure riding because they're on borderline, roster cut watch. And, something has to give, right? There has to be pressure building up for either guy on either side. But like I said before, when I first started breaking down this fight, is like, who would you rather back? The older guy who is his trajectory is going, downwards and outwards, or a younger guy who's trajectory upwards and upwards, whoever knows. Now, the reason why I feel like the odds makers made it this way, priced the fight this way, is because they probably saw Rolando Bedoya coming out struggling. They didn't really look closely. They really didn't look closely into Jai Herbert at all in terms of like, this guy is struggling on his end of the bargain too. It's not like Jai Herbert has been crazy or flawless, and they might be overvaluing him because of his overall record compared to what Bedoya has done. And also, I think they're pricing this because Jai Herbert does have the reach advantage, right? But that doesn't really scare me because Rolando Bedoya has fought some like lengthy guys in some striking exchanges, and he's held his own. And the only advantage Jai Herbert has going for himself is literally only the reach advantage and the experience, the fight experience. He has the veteranship, the savviness, which could help him, but because Bedoya has fought experienced fighters before in the company, and he hasn't come out victorious. But not to say, he's not struggling with these guys. He just can't get the job done to where he gets, the victory at the end of light at the end of the tunnel. And in some of his scraps, when he's throwing hands, he's literally dropped some people. He has legit dropped some people before. So it's not like Rolando Bedoya is absolutely like struggling or getting obliterated in this fight. It's like I said, he's holding his own. And maybe Jai Herbert switches up his game plan and uses his length to his advantage, or mixes up the ground game where Bedoya, I mean, he doesn't struggle there. So I just don't see Jai Herbert wanting it to take it there. Maybe if he does, Bedoya is live for a sub, which is I'm curious to see what his odds are for that. Which plus 950 isn't a bad look, maybe because my thinking is if Jai Herbert tries to shoot or if he senses trouble or danger and he gets clipped again and falls forward because you've seen time and time again where guys literally they try to hang on and survive, they get clipped, they get dropped to their knees, they instantly start grabbing for the ankle, trying to survive and hang on as their way of defense, and maybe the guy falls on top of him and it's either ground and pound or like a choke or something like that. So I mean, plus 950 would be a wicked all out shot and to have that prop hit. But the betting odds, the odds makers like this to go over 2.5 rounds. They like the fight to go the distance, which is alarming because just like the Dumas fight, which they kind of like the fight to go the distance as well. I mean, there's a live late finish here, possibly for the Bedoya side in late round 2, 3 maybe. The submission would be a cool sprinkle. I don't see him really knocking out Jai Herbert because with his length and experience, I think Jai Herbert's going to be a smarter fighter, hopefully this time around, and use that length to his advantage and not get himself clipped. But yeah, Bedoya can throw hands. He throws hard. He throws in volume, like high volume exchanges, high combinations. So after looking closely at this fight, I really, really do like Rolando Bedoya. I will probably take Rolando Bedoya at a dog price money line for your parlays or just a straight bet. I mean, plus 105 is not really something to write home about, but anytime you can get plus money odds and you place like 50 to 100 bucks on it, I mean, you take advantage of those and you take advantage of those quick. You could sprinkle on Bedoya inside the distance or Bedoya late round 2 or 3, a late finish. Submission would be a cool live call out. And if you want a safer play, I'd probably lean towards Bedoya by knockout or decision. Probably there. And if you want, like, I guess a true Hail Mary, it'd probably be the submission prop. I mean, if Jai Herbert can hang on and survive, Bedoya winning by decision at plus 300 is incredible value and insane value. But yeah, I'm going to lean the Rolando Bedoya fight for the second fight on this. Alrighty, moving on. We got our first female fight of the night, and I believe... Oh, no, it's not our only fight in the female fight of the night. We got 2 of them. We got one here on the prelims, one here on the main card as well. We'll get to that in a little bit later. But we got Viktoriia Dudakova versus Sam. I don't want to be rude, but her nickname should be Trash Can Hughes in the women's strawweight division at 115 pounds. So both women, same height at 5'5", both weight at the 115 strawweight division. And Viktoriia has the age advantage on her side, 7-year age difference. I mean, Sam Hughes is still in a prime age in the fighting game, so it's not too alarming or too bad. And, that is crazy. I just caught that or noticed that. So Viktoriia Dudakova, despite both women being the same height, she does, have the reach advantage as well by 3 inches, a huge reach advantage, especially in the women's fight game, which is huge. They both roughly land the same strikes per minute, so both orthodox girls. But even though they roughly land the same amount, the accuracy for Dudakova is just drastically, not drastically, majorly different than Sam Hughes, but it's a lot better at 66%. That's really solid. That's good compared to Sam Hughes is 57%. But even though she's accurate with her striking, it's nothing to write home about. Nothing with power. Nothing with like finesse or uniqueness. Nothing with combinations. It's very flat striking. Not really high level striking. So I'm not really alarmed or worried by it. But where the strength lies here for Dudakova, she is the stylistically and statistically, right? The numbers don't lie. It's literally right here in front of you. She is the more complete all-around fighter, and she had. Look at that takedown average. She's averaging 2.5 takedowns a match compared to Sam Hughes's barely 1, and it's not even really good takedown offense at all that she's shooting for, and it's not even accurate at all. Dudakova is actively seeking and looking out for those takedowns, and she's pretty decent on the defense as well. She's barely a little bit more accurate than Sam Hughes, but again, nothing drastic, nothing crazy. 42% compared to 30%. It's like it's at that point it's roughly the same. There's barely a significant. But yeah, Dudakova, I believe she opened up at like minus 165 or something like that, minus 160, minus 150 from what I remembered and what I can recall. And now she's already jumped up to minus 180, close to like almost minus 190 at most books. And before fight time, she might shoot up to minus 200, which at that point, it's a parlay piece, especially in the women's fight game. There's no value there with her price, raising up that high. And literally, when I saw this fight, I was like, how the hell is this fight priced this way? Like, why is Dudakova literally not like a minus 400, right? She should respectively be, and rightfully be priced that way. So I had to like deep dive and look closer. I'm like, there's no way this is right. Undefeated girl. She's on the hype train trajectory, looking very, very solid. I mean, still a young, fresh MMA career. She only has, I think 2 or 3 fights in the UFC, promotion, and she hasn't been with the company for a long time to compare to Sam Hughes, who has, I guess you could say, like veteran experience and veteran savviness, even though her career hasn't been that great or that kind to her. I mean, it's nothing really special to write home about. I mean, she's 8-6. Both girls literally have the same amount of wins, right? Sam Hughes literally has a couple more fights, 6 more fights, and they're all by way of loss. So it's like nothing really drastic there. So Sam Hughes has been with the UFC for 8 fights now. So there's some veteran experience difference there. And with the age, maybe she has a little bit of veteran savviness to her. But I still like the Dudakova side. I think she should be priced heavier. She's the all-around more complete, better fighter. Sam Hughes doesn't really have like anything to her game that impresses me. As I'm not trying to sound like rude or a dick by any means necessary. It is what it is. I've seen the tape. I've seen the fights, and it's like, all right. I mean, look at this. She came into the company, right? She started out on an 0-3 fight losing streak. Literally, her debut was against Tessia Pennington, right? And Tessia Pennington is so. She's okay. I mean, her last fight was earlier this year, and she got destroyed by a baby shark, Tabitha Ritchie, right? So I mean, and you're out here getting doctor stoppage TKO'd against her, okay? Then she lost to Loma Luke Boon Mi, and I believe Luke Boon Mi. I mean, she's okay. I mean, okay, that's a respectable loss. Luke Boon Mi, she did beat Bruna Brazil, and she's also 4-1 in her last 5. Her only loss is by unanimous decision to Godinez, who's also on this fight card, Lupe Godinez. But okay, so that's a respectable loss. Then you lose to Luana Pinheiro. Back-to-back unanimous decisions. Okay, then you beat Estela Nunez, who I don't even think is with the company anymore. She's been dropped. Elise Reed, I believe she's with the company still, but close to getting dropped. If not, then she already has. But she knocked her out. Okay, another trash can victory to not write home about. Piera Rodriguez, not a notable name in the women's fight game that you think of. Jacqueline Amorim, you beat her. I don't even think she's with the company no more. And then you lost to Yasmin Yaregi, who is, I believe, another respectable loss. I mean, she has a young, early MMA career, only 25. She's 11-1. So, again, respectable loss there. She's 3-1 with the company. So, I mean, she's been dominated fighters that she's expected to get dominated by. And she's lost to some trash can fighters where she was probably expected to win, and she didn't. And Sam Hughes, I mean, in her last 2, okay, so she's in her last 5, she's 3-2, 2 by unanimous decision. And in the UFC, she's been finished once where she got knocked out with the doctor stoppage, and then she has 4 losses by decision. So she's tough. She's hanging around. She's lingering around, but she's not doing anything impressive to warrant a victory on the scorecards. And like I literally just said, the fighter she's expected to get dominated by, she just has. She's losing unanimously across the board on the scorecards, and that's what I expect here. I don't think Dudakova has a finish in her. Is she capable of it? Yeah, I mean, she has 6 of her 8 victories are by way of finish, 4 by submission, 2 by knockout, and 2 decisions. So yeah, in the UFC, she only has 3 fights to her name, and she's a flawless 3-0, obviously, with her undefeated 8-0 record. But in regionals, being 5-0, she had all of her regionals wins were by finish. So I mean, submission, 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 TKO, doctor stoppage, another submission. She loves that rear naked choke. She has 3 of them, and then an armbar. And then in Dana White Contender Series, she went the distance. She knocked out Estela Nunez, who Estela Nunez is basically a trash can at this point. Really, really bad. So nothing crazy to write home about. And then she unanimously beat Jin Yu Frey. And I mean, she beat Maria Silva, right? Who is back to regionals after not making it. I mean, she won on Dana White Contender Series, and then she lost, and then never made it with the corporation. But I mean, that's literally her only loss. Dudakova gave her only loss, 9-1. 7 of those 9 wins were by finish, 3 knockouts, 4 subs. So I mean, say what you want. Her not being in the company, I mean, even though like her record and the track record for Estela Nunez is basically warrants that she should be with the company and she's not, and Dudakova, dominated her and pieced her up, literally knocked her out, is impressive to say the least. That is a solid victory. And then she unanimously beat Jin Yu Frey, who is a can. It's a person you don't want to be looking like you're going to the distance to. But I like here in this fight, I don't want to ramble too much on about it. I don't see a knockout going either way. I mean, Dudakova can try. Sam Hughes has a decent chin to somewhat at least hold on and survive that distance. I think the victory here, the path of victory for Dudakova is by submission. I think she's very, very live for a sub here. Sam Hughes is absolutely awful on the ground. I think Dudakova is just all around way better. I think that's Dudakova, historically, or I guess resume speaking, that's the strength of her game. She can stand and bang and stay on the feet, but I mean, most women fights do end up going the distance, so I wouldn't even be surprised if she does win by decision. I mean, literally the betting odds are favoring her to go over 2.5 rounds, -475. So they're saying, and -400 for the fight to go the distance. So they're saying yes. I mean, the Dudakova -120 price to win by decision is actually not a bad straight bet at all. I mean, you could sprinkle on it. You're basically paying 60 cents off of her money line price, and you're just banking on the fact that Sam Hughes can just hang on and survive. But yeah, I think Dudakova's live for a sub here. I would sprinkle on. It's not even a bad odds either. It's kind of long shot, not really, plus 650. It's not like Tony Ferguson's sub plus 1,000, whatever it was, or what it is now. So I think she can get like a late round 2-3 sub, but if not, you could probably play a safe double chance her by submission or decision, or straight bet her decision. But yeah, I like Viktoriia Dudakova. This is actually one of my more confident picks. This is going to actually make my main card worth of picks. And yeah, we move on to the next fight on the card. Alrighty, so next fight on the card, we got in the lightweight 155 division. We got Guram Kutateladze. And Guram, if you ever watch this, bro, I apologize. That probably sound like nails scratching on a chalkboard in your ears, but I'm trying my best, man. I'm trying my best with these wicked names. Versus Jordan Vucenic. I believe I pronounced that flawlessly right first try, no problems. So hopefully, I got that right. Now, it looks like here on ESPN Bet, I think this was a last-second makeshift fight. I think Guram was scheduled to fight somebody else, from what I remember, and then they in-placed this Jordan guy. I don't know if this fight was planned all along, a while back. Quote me if I'm wrong on that, or don't quote me if I'm wrong on that, sorry. Let me know if it was a different regular schedule bout. I can't recall or remember off the top of my head here, but, I mean, warranting that there's no betting odds, I'm going to assume that that's the case because Jordan Vucenic, this is his debut. He's coming out of the Cage Warriors regional scene, I believe, is where he's out of. Yeah, Cage Warriors, where he's been damn near flawless, 13-2 in his Cage Warriors career. I mean, that's a long regional scene career. 15 fights, even though despite, a lot of fights for fairly being, decently young and entering the prime of your fighting career at 28 years old. To have 15 fights and you're, half of your fights is half of your basically age is pretty decent and respectable. It shows you the balls and strength, that he has and willpower to take fights anytime, anywhere, whenever. And he's very, very active, which is what I like and I respect. And that's probably why, they saw his track record, they saw his success in the regional scene, but they also saw his high volume of activity. And we all know Dana White, that's what he loves in his fighters, is to be active and keep fighting. He hates these inactive, dry spell fighters, Leon Edwards. But it is what it is. That's not me saying that. That's literally the head of the company and the board of the company saying that. So, I just think maybe there's no betting odds is because ESPN Bet is one of the few sports books. I know FanDuel has odds out for this. I believe Guram Kutateladze is favored. Let me double check here. I gotta pull pull the app up on my phone to give you the odds. But I think last time I checked, when I was looking at the odds, Guram Kutateladze was the minus 170 favorite, which is interesting. I think Jordan Vucenic is definitely a live dog here. I actually might play straight bet or parlay, not parlay at a dog price, because if he's a decent dog price at plus 150 or whatever he may be, that's a solid straight bet for Jordan Vucenic to come out on top victorious in his UFC debut. So, now Guram has actually shot up from minus 170 from when I last saw it to minus 230, which is actually alarming and shocking. And Jordan Vucenic is a plus 190 dog. He's absolutely a live dog. So we got the guys here in the 155 lightweight division. You have an older guy in Guram Kutateladze, 32 years old, 5'11", so roughly the same height. Jordan is the shorter fighter by an inch, but the longer fighter in reach by an inch, which is, like I said, so weird. Sometimes the genetics just don't check out. I don't understand. I don't get it. But wish I could. Anyways, both guys fighting in the orthodox stance. We don't have any stats so far on Jordan Vucenic so far in the UFC, so you're gonna see blank across the board. And then we have Guram Kutateladze landing with decent volume, 4.6 strikes. I'm just gonna give him 5. We love to round up here, close to. Whoever told you not to, tell him the fuck off and tell him otherwise. You are. And I'm rounding up again. He's roughly landing half of his strikes pretty accurately. 50% of his strikes, they're 48.2% if you want to be, critical, a tight asshole about it. But yeah, his takedown average, not really there. That's not really Guram's strength, is his ground game. Not saying his ground game is trash. It's decent. It's semi-respectable. He has okay defense. He can sprawl and hang around. He's 1-1 by sub, so he's not completely terrible. But like I said, that's not his strong suit or where he's looking to take fights. He wants to stand and bang, stay on the feet, and respectable. He's one of the same, I guess, everyone from Georgia. These Georgian fighters, they love to stand and bang, except Merab's the only one that likes to wrestle. But Merab's coming out and saying he wants to box and piece up Sean O'Malley, and he's going to stand and bang with him, despite Sean being the taller, lengthier fighter. So we'll see how that plays out and goes in Merab's favor. I doubt Merab stands and bangs and strikes forever. He's obviously going to be actively looking for some takedowns, but like I said, we'll see when the time comes when that fight happens. I'm very, very intrigued to see that fight because style makes fights, and that's definitely going to be a solid, interesting scrap. But Guram Kutateladze, he's only had 3 fights, so he's had in the UFC promotion. So he's been with the company for a short-lived time. He started out in 2020. Then he didn't fight for 2 whole years, and I think that's where the trajectory of his career might start taking a dive. Because like I said, when you're inactive, so many things happen that do more harm than good. It really, really does hurt you. It's not a good thing at all when you're inactive because you're not keeping up with the times, you're not fresh, you're not polishing up your game, and it just hurts you all the way around. So yeah, he's debuted back in COVID where he was victorious by a split decision versus Matisse Gamrot, which is actually a very, very respectable win when you look back at it, because that is literally one of the only 2 losses in Gamrot's career. A guy who's 24-2, never been finished, 8-0 by knockout, 5-0 by sub. It's like he's lost unanimously to Darius, and then he's also lost to Kutateladze, which when you look at it right now, you're like, wow, that is an impressive win. Kutateladze has a respectable record, but again, most of his career has been on the regional scene, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. He's only had 3 fights with the company in his 16-fight career, and he's 1-2 right now. He's won by split decision against Gamrot, like I said, lost by split decision to Damir Ismagulov, which is a respectable loss. Yeah, that's not a bad loss at all. Imagulov is a dog. He can scrap. He's a handful. Despite, being on a trajectory downwards himself, he's on a back-to-back fight losing streak, but he's still 24-3 and 3-2 in the company. He was on a 3-fight win streak. So Ismagulov is not a bad loss at all. That's a respectable loss there. And then he also is on a 2-fight losing streak. So his last fight, he got knocked out by Elvis Brenner. And if you saw that fight, wow. If you missed out on that fight, you guys absolutely missed out. If you're a true MMA fan and you watch all the fights every weekend, every card, no matter what, whether if it's Apex Fight Night, whatever the case may be, or UFC Vegas, whatever the smaller cards, not numbered cards, then I don't know what to tell you. You're just either a casual and don't really care, or you should not just be watching the sport at all. Because despite what people say on social media in the comment section, like how they hate on fight nights or UFC Apex cards, they're just missing out on some solid good scraps when you look back at it on it historically. And that Elvis Brenner fight was one of them. I was fortunate and lucky enough to catch that one live over there at the Apex. That was the Strickland Magomedov card where Strickland pieced up and finished Magomedov, and I was actually really shocked by that finish because I actually liked Magomedov there decently, but Sean ended that early and pretty quick, so that was a shocking result to see. And that was when Sean Strickland started taking his game to next level, to new heights, and started trajecting upwards into where he is now. But yeah, so Elvis Brenner was actually getting destroyed and pieced up in that fight. He actually got cut pretty bad by Kutateladze. He had a huge gash. He was, one of those Brazilian fighters that have that bleach dyed hair like Charles Oliveira and all of them that they do that. Oh, and Elvis Brenner is also on this card later as well. We'll get into his fight soon. But he's also fighting at a shoot box, which is a respectable gym. So keep that in mind, keep that noted. But yeah, Elvis Brenner was literally losing, like, I believe the first 2 rounds on the card. He had no chance of victory. He literally needed to finish to win. He was getting dominated on the card. Huge gash, so much blood that it literally dyed his hair red. It turned his bleach blonde hair to red. And Elvis Brenner, talk about pulling out of the fire, like Leon Edwards' coach said when he, got that miraculous finish. Elvis Brenner pulled that shit out of the fire. What a comeback win. What a come from behind win. And he absolutely destroyed and pieced up Guram Kutateladze and finished him. Knocked him out in the 3rd round, late in the 3rd round. I was like, wow, what a scrap. What a fight we just witnessed and had here. So, yeah, Kutateladze 1-2. One of those finishes being by knockout. 7-1 by knockout. 1-1 by sub. 12-4 record. That's why I can't really get behind the Kutateladze huge juice laying chalk price with Kutateladze, because it's like you don't know what you're gonna get, man. I mean, this guy has already had a period in his career, a chunk in his career where he was inactive, a 2-year layover of 2 year of not being fighting, and then between that fight, those 2 fights, and then his next fight, which is his most recent fight, he had a whole year layover, which is not looking good, and he lost. And now he's having a whole another year layover again. So I'm going to lean Jordan Vucenic in this fight. Again, a guy who can scrap, is a dog, has high volume from what I've seen, and he has really beautiful flow state. He has a solid combination that he throws in a decent level of striking for Vucenic. Again, another guy who is a Cage Warriors beast. And those Cage Warriors guys, they come over here in the UFC and they're so well-rounded and polished, and they're so successful in that regional promotion company that they find, early on good success. I mean, Christian Leroy Duncan hasn't really had the success so far yet, but he's turned it around somewhat to have a decent start to his young and hopefully lengthy early UFC career. I mean, we saw Conor McGregor come over for Cage Warriors and dominate, became double champ. Herbert, one of the few Cage Warriors that haven't found success. Paddy Pimblett is another Cage Warriors guy who's, trajectorying up and finding success. So it's like these Cage Warriors guys, man, they're tough. So I don't know the exact established fighting style. He fights out of blood, sweat, and tears, which is what I believe Christian Leroy Duncan was fighting out of there at one point. Then he switched to this like smaller local gym, and that team is trash. I'm sorry, CLD, if you're watching this, you got to drop that team, bro. But which is funny that I say that this Jordan Vucenic guy, his strength is his striking because he lands with power, and it seems like Kutateladze struggles with these heavy hand hitters, these power guys. He doesn't do well with them, even though he can strike and exchange back with them. But Vucenic has never been finished. 13-2, 2 losses by decision. He lost a title defense fight, and then he lost early on in his career. His third fight in Cage Warriors, he lost by decision, or actually it was unity at the time before he moved on up to Cage. So he's bounced around early on through different regional scenes where he was 4-1, and then when he found his calling and home in Cage Warriors, where he was there since 2019, been there for 5 years, been there for a good while, he basically was 9-1. So he's been pretty good there, and he's 2-0 by knockout, 6-0 by sub. So 8 of his 13 victories have been by finish. So his ground game is actually pretty good, and that's where Kutateladze struggles. But if they want to keep this on the feet, Jordan Vucenic is really, really decent and pretty good there. And I don't think Guram Kutateladze is going to throw anything that's going to knock this Vucenic guy's head off. I think he has a decent chin to him. He also has the age advantage. He's the younger guy, 28 years old versus 32 years old. So there's that. I like Jordan Vucenic. I'm sorry if I keep butchering that name. Vucenic, I believe. I like him ITD. I don't know what odds you can get on the sportsbook if your sportsbook is even offering this fight, but I actually really like Vucenic. I mean, sub is live. I mean, sub on FanDuel is plus 600, which is absolutely crazy. I think he can actually pull it off. But if Guram can survive the ground game, I believe. I mean, the sports books are favoring it to go the distance, which is absolutely shocking. But I mean, you can get Jordan Vucenic by sub or decision at plus 230. I mean, his plus 190 price alone as a straight up money line underdog is pretty crazy. I would lean towards that way as well. And yeah, I really like that a lot here for Vucenic. I'm going to take the dog side here. There's going to be probably some live opportunities for some great value on this card. I mean, you see Bedoya early on. I mean, and some of these prices that are priced the way they are with the favorite, you can still even get good odds on the favorite. So I think this might be a high finish rate card because for whatever reason, whenever they go to Abu Dhabi, there's not really that many boring fights. We do get finishes time and time again. They do put on some exciting cards out there. They just put on a different show for fans over there for whatever reason. You must love, the people over there, whatever it may be. The fighters just like try extra hard and go for finishes. I'd have to do some research digging and find out the statistical number it is for like the finish rate on Abu Dhabi or overseas cards over there. But yeah, it seems like when out of all the overseas cards, I think Abu Dhabi has like one of the higher finish rates out of all of them. So yeah, I think Vucenic is a live dog here. I like him for the finish. And the only reason I'm leaning this dog or pass way, I don't know if Vucenic is going to make my official card just because there's a lot of hypotheticals and doubts. I mean, this is his debut, so gotta track that with a grain of salt. I just can't lay minus 230 with Guram with a guy who hasn't been looking like flawless or for sure promising. I mean, 1-2 his three fight career. Maybe he feels a little bit of pressure and needs to force something because he might be riding on the verge of getting roster cut. I doubt it. Maybe like if he loses again after this fight or whatever and isn't as active, he'll probably get dropped. I could see that happening. I mean, or even if he gets finished so bad here that it makes him so inactive that he can't fight again, then I could see that as well. But yeah, Guram hasn't really showed anything promising other than power punching. It's not really like highly accurate. I mean, he's throwing with volume, semi-accurate, but he's just not putting anybody away with it, and people are putting him away. So there's more pathways to victory for Jordan here than it is Guram. So, and he's the younger fighter, so I'm definitely going to lean Jordan here. Alrighty, and on to the next fight. For whatever reason, I apologize, guys, if the production of the stream isn't aesthetically pleasing. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, having technical difficulty issues with it being laggy or choppy or whatever. So if that's the case and you see this, I apologize. Just forget all that and just pay attention to what I'm saying, I guess, in the volume of the video and nothing else. I don't know why it's acting up like it is. It's whatever. It's been frustrating, irritating, and it been a hold up. So in recording this episode for you guys. So if it happens, it happens. I just want to move on, get this over with. I'm already up late grinding for you guys. So yeah, we're on to the next fight in the prelims. This is a 7-fight prelim. There's no early prelims. It's just prelims and straight main card. So they're trying to get it out of the way, straight to the point. We got Shamil, Gaziev, and Dontel Mays. I'm going to just get right to it. It's just Shamil, Gaziev all day freaking long. Dontel Mays, I don't have any interest in betting him at all or any side. Even if he wins and chalks a parlay or chalks your bet, at that point, like, bro, it is what it is. He has the age advantage, a 2-year younger fighter, 32 years of age versus 34, but that doesn't scare me at all or alarm me at all. That's fairly even. And Gaziev still looks really, really good and really, really solid for an older fighter, 34-year-old fighter. And honestly, it looks like he's aging like fine wine. Not, physically or appearance-wise, but like fighting stylistically wise, he's aging like fine wine and only getting better and better. He is 12-1 here versus an 11-6 Dontel Mays, and I just don't have any intrigue in Dontel Mays at all. He is starting to look like one of the trashiest of cans out there. Dontel Mays is just, there's no high-level fighting from him anywhere. And I don't see how there's not many pathways of victory for Dontel Mays. I mean, 6-1 by knockout, 1-2 by sub. So ground game is obviously definitely not his strength. Definitely a boxer striking. That's his style, is the stand-up game. Whereas Gaziev is the more complete fighter here and the more well-rounded fighter. He's got it all. He's got decent striking, very accurate striking, decently volume output striking, but way, 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 way better at the ground game. And anytime you can handle your way with Dontel Mays on the ground, he just gets frustrated and struggles and just wants out of the fight and quits. But yeah, I mean, Dontel Mays coming into the UFC, he was 3-1 on his regionals to start his career, lost to his Dana White Contender Series by knockout to Alan Crowder. Then he beat Mohammad Usman, which is in Victory Fighting Championship in regional, which is really not looking like an impressive win. Mohammad Usman's nothing like his brother. But then he wins by knockout on the Dana White Contender Series, goes back to regional, wins by sub, and then wins Dana White Contender Series again in season 3. So he had to prove himself multiple times in Dana White Contender Series just to get a chance or a shot. And ever since he finally got into the company roster, he's been like decent. He's been solid, nothing crazy. I mean, he's been with the UFC for 9 fights now, and he has 4 wins, 4 losses, and 1 no contest. So basically 1 draw. And in his losses, he lost to Rodrigo Nascimento, which is a decent loss. Augusto Sakai, who not with him anymore. He lost to Rodrigo Nascimento twice. He was by sub and by decision. Got submitted by Cyril Gane. It was like, what? Getting submitted by Cyril Gane is not necessarily crazy. It's just, I guess John Jones is just a level above him when it comes to that stuff. And then he's knocked out Josh Parisian, which is like, okay, whatever. Knocked out Andre Arlovsky, which again, older Arlovsky, it's like, okay, whatever. And then he's beat Kyle Machado by decision and Roque Martinez by decision. So not really an impressive resume. I mean, he's basically lost fights where he got finished or dominated by, and then fights he's expected to win, he's, for the most part, taking care of business. Shamil Gaziev, on the other hand, Oh, and by the way, Dontel Mays 2-inch reach advantage and a 3.5 inch, or excuse me, 3.5 inch reach advantage, 2-inch height difference. And despite all that, he is still the heavy underdog. And when this line opened up, it was like minus 275 Gaziev, and he's crept up and shot up. Now it's like the minus 300 range. And probably by fight time, he'll probably shoot up to like minus 320 or 330. And he's the clear heavy favorite side for good reason. I mean, similar strikes landed like Dontel Mays, similar accuracy, not too far of a drop off. And even though Dontel Mays shoots for similar amount of takedowns like Gaziev, Gaziev, his focal point isn't taking you down. It's just once it goes to the ground, like the ground game, I mean, that's where he shines and flourishes. He'll let his opponent take him down, and then he'll do the rest. He's very active on the ground in his sprawling, moving around. He's very mobile and agile, especially for a bigger guy, heavier guy at his age. Dontel Mays tries to go for the takedown, but he just doesn't have. He has decent wrestling, like strength wise. But Shamil Gaziev is not only strength, but he has the finesse factor to his ground game with the jiu-jitsu. I mean, Shamil Gaziev is the more full, complete, well-rounded fighter, top to bottom ground game and stand-up game. Whereas Dontel Mays, his only thing is boxing here, and Shamil Gaziev, with him being a more well-rounded fighter, has more pathways to victory than Dontel Mays. Dontel Mays, it's like he either knocks you out or doesn't and wins by decision, survives and wins by decision, or just loses by decision, or just gets dominated. There's no in between. There's no ground game pathway of victory really for Dontel Mays, and I don't think he's going to find it here with Shamil Gaziev, who's pretty good at takedown defense. Like I said, he's not actively shooting for takedowns, but if he wanted to, he could. It's there. And if he does get taken down, like I said, he's the more active sprawler. And Gaziev is coming off of a loss right now. I believe that's his first and only loss ever in his career. He's has a fairly young and even despite being 34 years old, a young and fresh UFC career because he is 2-1 in the UFC. And all of his fights, he's either won or ended by finish. In the UFC, he's submitted Greg Velasco in Dana White's Contender Series, knocked out Martin Buday, which is an okay win, and then he's been knocked out by Jairzinho Rozenstruik, which is a respectable, fairly decent loss. I mean, getting knocked out by Rozenstruik isn't the craziest thing. Rozenstruik's pretty decent on the feet. But other than that, in his regional scene, I mean, all his fights, he's won by basically a finish, except one time he won by split. But yeah, he's 8-1 by knockout, 3-0 by sub, and one decision, and then one loss by knockout. So Gaziev, there's not much to dive into this fight. Clear cut, straight to the point. Dontel Mays, I just don't see it for him. I'm gonna lay the chalk and the juice with Gaziev. You know, you're getting another, Middle Eastern, Russian, Dagestani type of guy. I mean, well, he's Bahrain, but another fighter that ends in Ev or Magomedov, Av or Ev, anything that ends with V, and they're in Abu Dhabi, they seem to flourish and shine and do well. They're one of the few fighters that have highly level respect for that region, like wherever they're from in the Middle East. And yeah, they want to put on a show for the fans. So I like Gaziev inside the distance. I don't see this fight going the distance at all. I actually be really shocked if it did. Be surprised, especially it's well known that these heavyweight fights they don't last the distance. They don't last very long. They kind of get finished, done, and out the way pretty quick. The odds makers agree here as well. Odds makers actually have this fight under 2.5 rounds favored, and the fight not go to the distance pretty heavily favored. I mean, Gaziev is a good money line piece. I'm actually really confident here, unless he gets absolutely chinned by Dontel Mays, which I'd be like really shocked. Maybe the reach helps Dontel Mays. If Dontel Mays has to really put it on Gaziev, but I've seen Gaziev take some shots and keep eating those and moving forward. What seems to be the struggle with Gaziev when he gets put away is the high volume of strikes, like the flurry and the barrage of strikes, especially mixed with the power. And I just don't expect that with Dontel Mays. Dontel Mays has power, like knockout power, punch power, don't get me wrong, but he's not throwing in a barrage or a flurry as a heavy guy who has a decent gas tank, like not anything over the top. I think Gaziev has a really solid gas tank, and he is the bigger guy in this fight, I believe, if we're talking weight-wise. Yes, or actually, no, he's not. So that's another advantage to him. I mean, Gaziev, when he came in, he was looking pretty a humongous person, like a swollen like a balloon. He's actually done a better job of getting better at his cardio and trying to slim and trim down a little bit. Still a big dude, but he looks more not cut up or chiseled, but he looks a little more physically appealing than he has in the past, which is a good trajectory for him. But yeah, I actually like Gaziev if you want a better price than his money line. I like a look at his ITD, and I also really do like him. Probably, I don't mind a sub. It's not a long shot to see him win by sub. For whatever reason, too, a lot of these like Middle Eastern people when they fight in Abu Dhabi and stuff, like they just love going to the ground game and getting ground game or just getting finishes overall in general. But it seems like they try to like lean more toward the ground game with the stand up. So, but yeah, like I said, so if someone can find a stat, I don't have it like on hand with me off the top of my head, but there has to be some sort of insane stat with fighters that with their last name ending in V or like Av or Ev. They have to have like an insane record when fighting in Abu Dhabi, like a highly positive record, maybe like a couple losses, but 30-3 or something like that, something insane. So, yeah, I see another fight going this way with Shamil Gaziev coming out on top in the head, getting back on track, finding success again, finding the win column after taking an L. And Dontel Mays as well, real quick. Let me. He is right now in his last 5, 2-2-1, and like I said, his resume isn't anything to write home about. Like, not really impressive wins, and his losses are pretty bad losses outside the Nascimento fight, so who he's lost to twice. But yeah, I'm leaning with Gaziev. Sprinkle some on the ITD. I mean, maybe ITD might be like minus 200 something. But yeah, if you want to lean towards under 2.5 or fight not go to the distance, I don't mind that at all either. This ain't going the distance, so I could see a lot of heavy finishes on this card. I mean, because these guys like to go for it. And backtracking to the couple of fights, like backtrack to Jai Herbert real quick. I know we want to move on to the next fight, but just real quick, the thing with Jai Herbert, I wanted to say and note, add on to that what I was saying earlier with that fight is maybe he feels the pressure and has to go all out for it and tries to like go for a finish or overexhaust or overextend himself, making him susceptible to a finish. Which is why I could also see Rolando Bedoya getting a finish or just calming down the like over hyper Jai Herbert and finishing him on the ground with the sub. And that's kind of the same way I also, if we want to go backtrack one more fight to the Guram fight, I think Guram's feeling a little bit of pressure after struggling last couple of fights and on a 2-fight losing streak. Maybe he overexhausts himself, overextends himself, and Jordan Vucenic can take advantage of it, piece him up, because Vucenic is a pretty decent IQ fighter. I don't know how high his IQ really goes in the fight game, but I'm going to assume that he's decently polished, respected fighter. So I could see a finish there on Guram if he's not too calculated and is just balls to the wall ballistic because he's trying so hard to either get a finish or trying hard to get a win. Sometimes when you feel that pressure of trying to get a win, that's when a lot of these heavy favorites or favorites in general just chalk your bet. I mean, we see it time and time again all the time. Leon Edwards was literally a heavy favorite, and we saw last weekend with the last card against Bilal Muhammad, and he tried to play it off like he wasn't feeling any pressure. He was downplaying Bilal Muhammad a lot, and we see time and time again in the fight business, anytime you downplay your opponent like he's a nobody or nothing, particularly doesn't end well, especially a guy who's a big underdog that has nothing to lose and is super confident in his game and worked a lot in his game to improve. It feels like he's the better fighter at a big dog price like that. So yeah, you can see it a lot in these fighters' eyes before like the jump off or the bell goes off and they enter in that octagon in that cage. They feel that pressure. So I mean, we literally just saw it last night with the PFL. I mean, Dakota Dacheva, sorry, I forgot to pronounce it, but she's a beast. Dana White heard make the call. Get her out of the PFL, please. Get her into the UFC fight promotion. A big deal. She brings a lot to the women's MMA. She's a very exciting fighter, a very good looking fighter as well. So she's something different, refreshing, and can sprunk up and spice up the women's fight game. Kind of like on a teetering slope right now, kind of down right now without big names like Nunez. Rousey's been gone for years. There's just nothing spicy about it. So bringing her over to the UFC would be huge. I mean, we just brought Kayla Harrison over. I mean, I say we like I work for the company, but you get the gist. You know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, Dakota Dacheva, she's in the championship now. She'll be fighting Tyler Santos, or I think it's Tyler Santos, Tyler Santos in the championship. But yeah, she beat Jenna Bishop today, and Jenna Bishop saw the pressure. Dakota Dacheva had no pressure on her. I mean, she was the heavy favorite, right? But she had the experience, been there, done that. She won the local PFL regionals in Europe. She held the belt over there in championships, so she knows what it's like to be there. I mean, there was more pressure for Jenna Bishop, and then she took care of business, took her apart. She did take her down, try to find success in the ground game, but Dakota Cheva has decent ground defense, and she doesn't have the offense really, or not really trying to look for it, but she's just lengthy with her limbs and how small Jenna Bishop is. It's hard to get on top of that, close the gap distance in the ground game, and finish somebody. Sure enough, Dakota got back up to their feet, couple body shots with the knees, bam, it was over. So yeah, you just gotta keep that in the back of your mind. A lot of these bets for these fighters too is mental, mental, mental. So that's why you gotta do extensive research. Don't it's hard to say that though, because I know a lot of people like they overdo it when they watch like film, or not film, but they over extend and overthink. They watch these press conference interviews, right? And they're like, they take everything so literal. You got to take it 50-50. Take it with a grain of salt, but also like keep it in the back of your mind, because press conference, weigh-ins, like face-offs, they give you a small glimpse of like what to expect or what you can see. But there's so much going on like between both camps, or what we know health-wise, like staph infection, whatever. There's so many implications that is probably about like 10 to 20% of playing into effect of like your betting, tactics or strategy, and in the outcome of the fight. So just keep that in mind. But mental aspect is a huge thing of it all. So I just wanted to go back and backtrack and let you know about the Guram fight and the Jai Herbert fight, so I could see those going to finish. So yeah, I just see a lot of finishes on this card. But anyways, enough of me rambling about that. Let's move on to the next fight, which is Mohammad Yahya and Kaue Fernandes. Now, not really familiar with either fighter, so I'm just going to tell you off rip. This is probably going to be my biggest, stay away. But if I had to lean anywhere, I'm probably going to lean with the Brazil guy, despite Mohammad Yahya being the live dog here, because, fighting in the UAE, he's a UAE regional guy. He's going to be a fan favorite, has the hometown crowd buff rocking with him. I mean, these hometown crowd buff guys, man, they pull through even as these big dog spots. But I don't know, this is a tough draw for him. I could see Yahya being a live dog. I'm not really too knowledgeable on either guys. That's kind of like my flaw or my fault for you guys for not doing extensive homework or research on either fighter. But I mean, both guys are coming in the lightweight division at 155, both 5'9", right? So similar, same dimensions, same reach, same everything, 1 year difference. So these guys are practically the same across the board. Yahya, the striking department favors him in terms of strikes landed. Not too drastic of a difference. I mean, 3 strikes to the 1.5 or 2, however you want to wage it. So yeah, but also he's landing more punches, so higher volume output, but again, not as accurate. Basically, half of his strikes are accurate in landing, whereas Kaue Fernandes not throwing with high volume, but he has insane striking accuracy with 73%. Both guys averaging 1 takedown a fight, and they're 100% accurate, and 1 submission average for Mohammad Yahya. So he might have 1 sub attempt in his lone UFC fight. There's not much data on either guys, because Mohammad Yahya only has 1 UFC fight to his name, and same as Kaue Fernandes. So both guys, young, fresh, UFC careers here. Only 1 fight to their name, to their belt, with Kaue Fernandes 8-2, 4-0 by knockout, 2-0 by sub, never been finished. His only loss is to Mark Diakise, which is a decent loss to your name, especially early on in your career, but overall not a great loss that you want to have. It's like MMA math record wise. Mark Diakise is a solid fighter, not all the way entirely bad. And then his other loss is to some guy Sardinia by decision. So yeah, guy's never been finished. Has a couple finishes to his name in his young career. Only 10 fights for Kaue Fernandes, and I mean, only have 10 fights at 29 years old. not the greatest thing to see. Not too much experience, so he might have gotten to MMA a little bit late. Some of these Brazilian guys, they do start late, but they also finish late too. A lot of these guys retiring in their 40s, just crazy to see. Muhammad Yahya, 12-4, 7-1 by knockout, 2-2 by sub, and in his lone UFC fight, he lost to Trevor Peek about a year ago by decisions. I mean, not the greatest thing to look at, but he's coming up on the regional scene here, UAE Warriors. He was also in Bellator Europe, in the Bellator European scene, where he was 1-1, got submitted, knocked somebody out. But yeah, he got knocked out in Desert Force. He was 3-1 there. He went to another regional company. He won by sub, moved up to Bellator Regionals, went 1-1. Then went to UAE Warriors, where he was basically what was 7-1, and then has lost in the UFC. So not much data volume to go off either guys. They heavy in the regional scene, only one UFC fight, so this is definitely not making my card at all a way around. I'm probably going to stay away. I mean, just for funsies, you could probably sprinkle on Muhammad Yahya. I don't know what to expect stylistically from either guy at all. One guy's all-around fighter, top and bottom, stand-up game, ground game in Muhammad Yahya, but it's not like a fully complete fighter that's dangerous. And then you got Kaue Fernandes, who's like more of a little bit of a ground game guy. I mean, he's kind of well-rounded too, has a decent stand-up game, but I don't know what to make of this. I'm just going to stay away all the way around, and I'm probably sprinkle some for fun on Yahya. This will probably be dog or pass just because I'm going to ride with the hometown crowd buff kid and at plus 300 price. Not bad at all, but yeah, just absolutely stay away from this fight. I watch it for enjoyment, I guess. I don't even have like an angle really on any of the props either. I'm really curious to look at these props because they like it over 1.5 rounds, but not go the distance. So they're expecting someone to get finished here. No clue who. Based on the odds, they're expecting this Kaue guy to knock out Muhammad Yahya. Who knows at all? So both guys have finishability, but also both guys have decent survivability and taking it to the distance. So this is just a true 50-50 fight all the way around in all aspects of it being. So yeah, just stay away. Not going to make my official card. All right, and then the last final fight here, we got Azamat Murzakanov versus Alonzo Menifield. Now, this fight did catch my eye. I am familiar with the Alonzo Menifield name. Sorry, I was scratching my arm, so I apologize if that was distracting in my face cam. But yeah, Alonzo Menifield here, not looking too bad on paper. We got a guy coming in as Azamat Murzakanov, who is undefeated, a flawless 13-0. Hasn't been truly tested in any aspect, really. I mean, his UFC career, I mean, he only has 4 fights in the UFC. Well, technically 3, but one of them including a Dana White Contender Series fight. And all 4 of his fights, or excuse me, all of his fights, his last 5 fights, he's won by finish. 4 of them being by knockout. And his last fight, he's coming off a unanimous victory where he probably dominated Dustin Jacoby. So not being able to finish Dustin Jacoby is a little alarming, but I mean, hey, I guess you dominated him, so does it really matter? Letting Dustin Jacoby survive is, I guess, impressive for how old Jacoby is. But Jacoby's also a dangerous man, too, so it's not too bad. But yeah, he's knocked out Devin Clark, which is whatever. Stefan Nchukwi, he's knocked out, which is whatever. And then Matthew Scheffel, he's knocked out, which is, again, whatever. So he has a solid MMA resume record-wise, but opponent-wise, there's not really a strength of opponent right there. And then in the regional scene, obviously undefeated, where he has gone 9-0. Don't know what to make of this Azamat Murzakanov guy, because like I said, he's never been truly tested here. Southpaw fighter, 9-0 by knockout, 1-0 by sub. So 10 of his 13 fights have been by way of finish. Decent finish rate. I could expect a finish here because, I mean, and there's also no odds for this. So I think maybe this is a short notice fight. They probably had to makeshift this around. Either Azamat was fighting somebody else or Alonzo Menifield was fighting somebody else. Who knows? I'm going to assume Azamat was fighting somebody else. So Alonzo Menifield's taking the fight on short notice. So for the betting odds, because ESPN Bet again is one of the sports books that is slacking, that don't have betting odds for you guys. I'm gonna pull it up here on my phone real quick with FanDuel, but I believe Azamat should be the favorite. I would be surprised if he wasn't, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that he is. So Azamat is a minus 240 favorite on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Alonzo Menifield plus 198 dog, basically plus 200 there. So Alonzo Menifield has a huge, drastic reach advantage, which plays into his favor. Both guys, 5'10", 6 foot. So a little bit of a decent, drastic height differential, not too crazy, but in the 205 light heavyweight division, I believe Alonzo Menifield was fighting lower than that, if I'm not mistaken. In light heavyweight, I don't think he's always been a light heavyweight. Maybe I'm tripping. Maybe he has. So don't quote me. Yeah, I guess he's always been a light heavyweight division because he looked smaller before and he looks like he juiced up and got bigger. But I guess he's always been naturally that big of a dude. Yeah, the 205 weight class, Southpaw versus Orthodox. So you have conflicting stances here. 70. I can't skip past that 76-inch reach advantage versus 71.5, which is absolutely bonkers. And both guys have respective significant strike land output, right? 4.5, 4.6 for Azamat to basically 4 for Alonzo Menifield. So respectively semi-even. The accuracy department goes in favor of Alonzo Menifield, but not drastically. Basically about the same, 64% to like 60%, 59%. A little bit favors in the takedown average, but about roughly the same. No, Azamat's nowhere near accurate with the takedown game, and Alonzo Menifield is not far behind him, not that accurate as well. He's only getting a takedown 1 for every 3 takedowns he puts out. So both guys' ground game is not their strong suit. Are they capable of being semi-comfortable on the ground and getting finishes? Absolutely. But that's not where they want to take the fight. They want to be standing and banging on the stand-up game. I honestly might lean Alonzo Menifield. Like I said, I haven't done my research and if taking this fight on a short notice, but he might be a live dog here because Azamat, like I said, hasn't really been tested and he just hasn't fought anyone like worth of like any threat or anything like that. Whereas Alonzo Menifield is a proven fighter. He has a solid resume, a respectable resume, respectable record, 15-4-1, 10-2 by knockout. He has been knocked out before. He is finishable. He literally is coming off of a knockout loss versus Carlos Ulberg. They were supposed to fight the Black Jag, Carlos Ulberg, and then they finally got the fight to go through, and he knocked his ass out in literally 12 seconds. They made it super easy, which was crazy. So I don't know what to make of Alonzo Menifield. He's an exciting fighter, high finish rate guy. Both guys are. But I feel like despite Alonzo Menifield having a solid, record in his last 5 fights, I mean, his last 5, he's 3-1-1. So not too entirely crazy or too bad. But I just feel like he's another one of those roller coaster guys where you just can't get on the right side behind him. I've never really been on the right side of Alonzo Menifield. I faded this dude. I haven't had a good job of handicapping him. Despite, I think the Dustin Jacoby fight was the only thing I had. I had him finishing Dustin Jacoby again. That Dustin Jacoby, I guess, just a tough son of a gun to put away because he went the distance with him, just like Azamat Murzakanov. So, the MMA math is there and it checks out. Like, both guys have a common opponent in Dustin Jacoby and they went the distance with him. So, but yeah, Jimmy Crute, Alonzo Menifield drawing with Jimmy Crute not too long ago is a little bit alarming. And then a couple months later, they resolved that draw and Alonzo Menifield submitted Jimmy Crute, which is like Jimmy Crute isn't anything to write home about. And I feel like Jimmy Crute is retired now from what I heard. I think he took the gloves off or something like that. Who knows what happened there. But yeah, in the last, because there's a video here, I guess, or a picture of him taking off his gloves. Literally had the tape off as well. And he was like bowed down or praying. I don't know if Jimmy Crute either got cut or, fired, but he's not active there anymore. Yeah, does unanimous decision, Dustin Jacoby, Jimmy Crute, sub, draw, and then Turkinov he knocked out, which I don't even think is with the company. So, I mean, he has finishes to his name, a high knockout rate. He packs a punch with his power. And I almost feel like at this point in Alonzo Menifield's fighting career with the UFC, he's almost like kill or be killed in terms of like he's either knocking you out or the one getting knocked out. Unanimous decision loss to William Knight, which is like, okay. Yeah, when he came to the UFC, I mean, 3 straight knockouts, decision loss to Devin Clark, which is not a good look. OSP knocked him out, which is okay. That's a respectable loss. OSP, savage, pretty good guy. Submission win, decision loss, you name it. But the only thing going for Alonzo Menifield here is he has a longer resume, a longer tenure with the career. He's been with the UFC since 2018 now, or technically 2019, with 13 fights to his name. I mean, you have veteran experience who's proved himself with a solid resume, an okay resume, I guess, in the light heavyweight. He's proved himself with a decent finish rate with some wins, whether they may be trash cans or not. He doesn't have good losses to his name. And Azamat, he's in that fraud check department right now because he's got this hype train going. Been perfect in his young UFC career. I mean, 4 fights at the top level, at the top company. I mean, this guy also hasn't fought in over a year. Whereas Alonzo Menifield, I think he's already fought this year in 2024. So Alonzo Menifield has already been active. Azamat's taking time off. That inactivity could hurt him. With Alonzo Menifield having a decent, resume and okay fighting style. Yeah, he got knocked out in May earlier this year. So, I mean, at least he's being active. He's trying to get fights. So I would lean dog or pass on this one. I'm not too familiar with the Azamat side. I'm more well versed in the Alonzo Menifield side. Alonzo Menifield's definitely a live dog here if he can knock out and put Murzakanov away. He also has the bigger reach advantage, so he could definitely hand Azamat's first loss here. I'm not too familiar with the odds because they don't have them up here for ESPN Bet in terms of like props or anything like that. But Alonzo Menifield, if I were to see him to win, it would definitely be by knockout. I just don't see Azamat surviving the heavy hands and barrage that Alonzo Menifield has. But the thing I don't like about Alonzo Menifield is he's not really a polished striker. He can get sporadic and wild and throw with like wild, heavy reaches and exchanges. And if Azamat is what I assume to be a decently IQ, somewhat semi-high IQ fighter, he can probably counterpunch Alonzo Menifield to death and pick him apart and piece him up, which worries me. It's just Alonzo Menifield being the taller guy, longer reach advantage, more experience, decent resume, heavier hands. I don't know what kind of hands this Azamat guy has. I'm going to lean Menifield by knockout at plus 500, which is a good look. I don't think this fight goes the distance. I mean, it's favoring towards not going the distance. When you get these heavier guys who can land heavier blows and heavier punches, they don't seem to survive that long. So, yeah, Alonzo Menifield here by way of knockout, dog or pass, and we move on to the main card after that was the last fight of the prelims. All right, on to the first fight of the main card. We're getting spoiled here with a somewhat of a lengthy, this is one of the longer main cards I've seen in a while. A 6-fight main event card, and we're getting it kicked off by Joel Alvarez and Elvis Brenner. Now, when I was looking at this fight and handicapping it, I was expecting this to be a pick'em. I'm not understanding why the odd makers are leaning towards Joel Alvarez. I'm just going to come out straight, say it, and get straight to the point. I'm leaning dog on this one, dog or pass. Elvis Brenner is teetering, making my official card, my official play. I mean, I'm not going to have an insane official play here on this card. It looks like only 4 or 5 fights might even make my card, roughly borderline 7, so a little less than half of the card might make my official plays and my official list of plays for this card. So a lot of these fights, there's dog value here, man. I mean, there is live dogs barking, and this is another case and another scenario here that we have here in the Joel Alvarez Elvis Brenner fight. I could see Brenner making my official card. I just can't get all the way there just yet. I've not fully swayed or convinced myself. I am confident in him despite the height advantage. I mean, 6'3" versus 5'10" is absolutely insane and pretty alarming, actually, that height differential. But Joel Alvarez doesn't really pack a punch despite the reach advantage. I mean, He has decent exchanges, but he doesn't land. He lands with decent combinations, not any barrages or flurries, but his damage isn't really there. And even if you do have damage, you really, really have to put Elvis Brenner away, or this man is a madman. He just nuts and insane. He doesn't care. He keeps coming after you like a freaking zombie, brain dead. He really keeps advancing, closing the gap despite, whatever you have, whether it's ground game to negate it or the height advantage in this case, Joe Alvarez. I mean, Joe Alvarez has a great record overall, 20-3 versus 16-4. This is a great fight. Like I said, this should really truly be, in my eyes, handicapped at a pick'em price. And I believe Joe Alvarez opened up at like -170, -175, and he's come back down to earth a little bit towards -150. And I think I expect his price to come down a little bit more because those who know about Elvis Brenner, they're probably going to bet him right before fight time or like right as the prelims are going to end, and probably could drop Elvis Brenner to like a +115 at one point. I mean, you got a freaking 4.5-inch reach advantage. There's a 5-year age gap difference, but that doesn't alarm me because Joe Alvarez is still fresh, young in his early 30s. And I mean, but still a 5-year age advantage that favors Elvis Brenner a little bit for the youth and longevity in the 155 lightweight division. But Elvis Brenner's landing with more, and he throws with more volume, and he's landing, and they have about even accuracy. But the problem with Brenner is he has similar accuracy to Joe Alvarez, but I think he lands with more power than Alvarez does, excuse me. And Alvarez is supposed to be a ground game guy. That's supposed to be like his strength. He has a good resume on the ground game with, I think he has like 6 wins by sub or something like that, something crazy. My bad. 17 of his 20 wins have been by way of sub, but statistically, what it's showing on here on the UFC stats, I don't know if ESPN doesn't have it updated or they don't have his official stats, but they're saying he has a 0 takedown average, 0 takedown accuracy, but a 1.2 sub average, which I don't understand or don't know how that makes any sense. If you have 17 wins by submission, are you the one letting them take you down and you're baiting them to that and they fall into your trap and you're submitting them? Like, how are you having 17 submission wins on your record, but you're not the one taking him down? Has he not shot a takedown in the UFC or something? Because, bro literally has wins by sub in the UFC. He has 3 of them in his last 5, which is crazy to talk about, that he has a 0 sub advantage. So it's like, what's going on there with ESPN? I don't understand. I don't get it. So that could be deep waters and deep trouble for Elvis Brenner here. Because, Elvis Brenner, he has decent ground game in terms of defense. Like, he sprawls and survives, but his stylistic favors him on the feet despite him being, both guys being Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artists. Elvis Brenner is fighting at a shoot box, which shoot box is a more heavy striking-based academy, striking-based team. And rightfully so. You see it in Elvis Brenner's game. 2 of his wins in the UFC have been by knockout. Joe Alvarez has the experience in the UFC company, a longer tenure. But yeah, 17 wins by sub is alarming. That is absolutely nuts and crazy. Has found success with the ground game and gotten submissions, and he's trying for it, right? And it is working, but he tried it one time on Arman Tsarukyan, and he got absolutely destroyed. Absolutely a big cut and gash and got pieced up. Couldn't defend himself. The judge or the referee stopped it. Yeah, and that was when Arman Tsarukyan was proving that he was a problem. Both guys still have young, fresh UFC careers. Slightly advantaged towards Joe Alvarez with a little bit more experience and a little more fights on his resume. He has 7 fights in the UFC, 2 Brenners, I believe 3 or 4. Here, I think it's officially 3 for Elvis Brenner, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it's 3 because I think one of his fights is Dana White's contender. Nope, he has actually 4 fights in the UFC officially. So he won by split decision versus Tukhugov. I don't want to butcher that. And he won that. He fought 3 times in 2023 last year. So Elvis Brenner's activity is absolutely insane, and he's already fought this year. So, and that's the other thing, is that plays in favor of Elvis Brenner being the younger guy and having more activity. only gives you a chance to prove yourself and test yourself and get better and better, which it's like Joe Alvarez came to the UFC and hasn't really tested himself. So he beat Kutateladze in that comeback win in the third round. Then he knocks out Krzyzewski, which was, I mean, a trash can win. Absolutely destroyed him, dropped him. And then he got lost unanimous decision to Oralbai, which is a respected loss because Oralbai looks like he's just straight out of like the Mongolian times. Like he literally rode horseback with Genghis Khan. It's absolutely crazy. Like Oralbai looks like an absolute scary madman warrior. Even though his face has like a little bit of innocence to him, dude, that guy is a problem. And the fact that Elvis Brenner kind of scrapped with him to deep waters and went the distance is very, very respectable. And you got to applaud that. Whereas Joe Alvarez, if you go look at Joe Alvarez, and he also doesn't even look like a guy that's threatening. He looks like a guy that doesn't pose a threat at all. I'd be more scared of Elvis Brenner than Joe Alvarez, despite what the resume and records say for both fighters. But yeah, Joe Alvarez has already been knocked out twice. One of them was in the UFC, and one of them, I believe, was in regionals. So he is definitely knockoutable. It looks like he's flawless on the ground game. That's not where you're going to get him. But yeah, first fight in the UFC, he lost to Ismagulov, which is, again, respectable. I mean, he got fed to the wolves off rip and went the distance. Like, clap it up there for that. Then he knocked out a can and Danilo Buyardo. I don't think is in the company no more. Submitted Joe Duffy, another can. Submitted Alexander Yakovlev, who, again, most of these guys I don't even think are in the company anymore. So the guys that he's finishing, it's like not really an impressive resume. He knocked out Thiago Moises, who is now, I believe, or no, that's Thiago Santos, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Thiago Moises is still with the, he just fought earlier this year. But yeah, he finished him, but again, not an impressive win to write home about. And then when he fought, so the people he was supposed to get dominated by, he has. I mean, Arman Tsarukyan knocked him out. And then his most recent win was against Mark Diakise by submission. But again, Mark Diakise is like a whatever fighter. He's okay. But yeah, I mean, the last time Joel Alvarez has fought was July 22nd, 2023. So, I mean, he only fought one time in 2023 to Elvis Brenner's 3 times, which is insane activity. And Elvis Brenner has already fought this year, and Joe Alvarez has not. So it's already been a year and some change since Joe Alvarez has last fought. That's a huge layover compared to a guy who's actively getting better. And before that, there was a year-long layover for Joel Alvarez. He fought in 2022, and he had a year-long layover in 2020 and fought again in 2021. So it's like this guy's only fighting one time a year. The last time he's fought multiple times in a year, it was 2020 and 2019. He fought 2 times in the same calendar year in both those years. Other than that, he's literally only fighting one time a year, which is not good, especially a guy that's getting older into his 30s, and you're not as active, not as fresh. You've already been knocked out to Arman Tsarukyan, and the funny thing is Arman Tsarukyan was holding his ground in the ground game, and that's where Arman Tsarukyan's ground game was nowhere to where it is now, nowhere near the levels. He's only improved and gotten better in that, way stronger. I mean, being with them over there, it was like he was just going with the flow, and he was manhandling Joe Alvarez, who's supposed to be a ground game submission artist. And not only that, beat him at his own game, went to the ground with him, and just ground and pounded his face in and dominated him, like just literally destroyed his face off. So once you get finished like that and beat at your own game, it messes with you psychologically as a fighter. So I like Elvis Brenner here as a live dog. I don't think Joel Alvarez wants to exchange and throw hands with Elvis Brenner, because if he does, he's going to find himself in deep trouble and deep problems, especially with the guy fighting at a shoot box. I like Elvis Brenner live by knockout here. I don't see this fight going the distance, and the odds makers agree with me. They like over 1.5 rounds. They don't like the fight to go the distance, though. And I think, yeah, Elvis Brenner, money line is a great pick. Elvis Brenner, plus 550. His path to victory is not by submission here. If he submits Joe Alvarez and beats him at his own game, that is embarrassing. But yeah, Joe Alvarez is not going to knock out Elvis Brenner. His pathway of victory is by submission or trying to survive that way and winning by decision. And then Elvis Brenner, vice versa. He's winning by knockout, or if he can survive submission and put enough visible damage on Joe Alvarez to sway the scorecards, he's going to win by decision. But I'm going to lean the underdog here. Dog or pass, Elvis Brenner by knockout, plus 550 is crazy. I think I expect a late finish here. Maybe Elvis Brenner struggles on the ground early on. He survives round 1 because Joe Alvarez takes the fight there. Joe Alvarez can't put him away. They stand it back on the feet. Alvarez has better cardio, in my opinion. more power in his punches, and he just absolutely sparks and clips Joe Alvarez and put him out in a way like maybe take second or third round here. But yeah, I like Elvis Brenner, dog or pass to start out our main card in the lightweight 5 division. Alrighty, a simp delight here. Man delight in terms of attractiveness with Mackenzie Dern, and man, was she looking good. She was looking very, very appealing. Shout out Mackenzie Dern, man. She looks really, really good. I don't know what to make of this fight, and it looks like the odds makers are starting to agree with me. So Mackenzie Dern opened up at like a minus 140, minus 145 favorite. Then she sneakily crept down to minus 135, and then at one point it was like minus 125. Now it's showing she's minus 120. And in my eyes, I handicap this fight as another true pick'em fight. I don't know what to expect from this fight. I'm definitely gonna stay away from this fight. It's definitely one of those women's fights where it just has disaster written all over it, and I don't want any part of it. There's not going to be any official play making my official card here, but I will tell you where I lean, and I'm probably going to lean the Mackenzie Dern side. I'm not too, turned on by it. I'm not too excited. It's not something that tickles my fancy at all, and that's why I'm just going to stay away completely, not even get involved. Although, also, this is your typical Mexico-Brazil rivalry, taking it from soccer, moving it to the mats, into the octagon cage, which is, I guess, cool to see. And, yeah, Mackenzie Dern, again, another fighter where it's like she looked so promising at times in her career, looked undeniable, unbeatable, looked like she was going to be a solid contender, a solid champ, maybe a belt holder, and a respected belt holder for quite some time and for a while, and then she just, for whatever reason, couldn't figure it out and couldn't get there. And then, when I speak of mental challenges, mental aptitude in the fight game, it's a huge, serious thing. Mental aspect of the fight game is very, very huge. And I mean, Mackenzie Dern can say that, speaks for herself, and it shows because she reached some deep troubles mentally in her life. She had some out of the cage, personal life issues affecting her and bothering her, and it ultimately translated into her fight game. I guess she left her gym, left her team. She didn't have a true team or fight camp, and she was just training herself out of like her own home gym in her garage, which is not the same. Found losses. She didn't find any success there, which rightfully so, that's expected. So I don't know if she dropped her team or her team dropped her. And then I don't know if she's like turned lesbian now. I don't know her sexual orientation or anything like that. I mean, I'm gonna assume so. I mean, most fighters end up turning up that way, but she had some falling out with her husband. She was married. She had a straight marriage, and a bunch of rumors circulating that her husband cheated on her or something like that, and they got divorced. And then I heard another rumor that she cheated on her husband with a girl, and like broke his heart, and they got divorced or something like that. So she was going through like a messy divorce struggle. So the out of the octagon personal life stuff got to her, and I guess, and I'm gonna assume it was her doing the cheating because I guess the divorce settlement favored the husband or something like that. She ended up having to make divorce payments for whatever reason, and she was like selling off or auctioning her off her like fight gear. She couldn't afford a team or a camp, which is why I think she left, and was training out of her home gym, trying to like save money. She was like selling her fight shorts on auction to like make ends meet and help like pay off her husband in the divorce settlement or something like that. Something weird like that. It was just a whirlwind of emotions and a mess for her, and just translated into her fighting career where she has been struggling. She is currently right now 2-4 in her last 6 fights with losses to Marina Rodriguez, which is like, okay, you beat Tessia Pennington, which is a can, and you went the distance with her. I mean, Marina Rodriguez is a very respected boss. She's a scrapper. She's a fighter, so can't knock her for that. But I mean, you beat Tessia Pennington by split decision. That's pretty embarrassing. A girl you probably, for your caliber and your level of fighting style and IQ, should have probably dominated her. Then you lost majority decision to Yan Xiaonan, who is a title contender currently and a top ranked fighter. So can't knock you for that. You go to the distance with Angela Hill, which Angela Hill, I mean, her record doesn't look pretty, but I guess Angela Hill, a roller coaster fighter herself. I mean, she's a good fighter, so I could see stylistically that favored a decision there, and she pulled it off and won it. And now she's on back-to-back losses where it's not pretty. I mean, outside Lemos, She gets knocked out and finished by Jessica Andrade. She got dropped multiple times. I mean, Jessica Andrade dominated her, punched her in her face like a punching bag. The striking wasn't there for Mackenzie Dern. She tried to make it work, but the striking is just not her strong suit, despite being like a decent semi kickboxer. She has good kicks. She knows how to keep her range and keep her distance, but she let little itty bitty Jessica Andrade close the gap and close the distance on her and absolutely piece her up despite having the height and reach advantage. And it almost looked like she let Jessica Andrade find her like old championship belt holder, title contender self, and actually made her look competent and good because Jessica Andrade has been struggling herself. I believe that's like her only win in her last 5 fights, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe her second. Okay, yeah. She's on a 2-fight win streak. She beat Marina Rodriguez by split decision. So Jessica Andrade has found a little bit of success recently. But yeah, before that, she was on a big old skid. She was getting finished left and right, knocked out, sub twice. And that's another girl who has out of the octagon issues and struggles and problems. I mean, she had like a messy breakup with her ex-girlfriend or something like that. Had to start on OnlyFans to make ends meet. And it turned out like her ex-girlfriend was cheating on her with her manager, and they pocketed like the OnlyFans money that she was making. It was crazy too. She had like some messy stuff, and she couldn't afford much things to make ends meet. She was auctioning and selling her stuff off. I think that's probably where Mackenzie Dern got like the inspiration from, something like that. I don't know. Yeah, and so off out of the octagon issues affected her, like fighting issues, I guess, or whatever, and hurt her. So both girls were in a bad position, and Mackenzie Dern just made Jessica Andrade look good and let her find her old self. And then you go the distance with Amanda Lemos, and honestly, literally, John DeRoba gave you the blueprint on how to beat Amanda Lemos, and it looked like for a second there early on in the fight, Mackenzie Dern was showing glimpses of actually being a competent fighter, and then it just all derailed from there, abandoned her game plan. Like the clear-cut game plan was to take, Amanda Lemos to the ground and beat her there. That's her weakness. I mean, she's okay on the ground, but John DeRoba just manhandled her and finished her and submitted her and beat her. That's all literally Mackenzie Dern had to do was just lay on her and win a boring decision, and she could have beat Lemos. But for whatever reason, she kept wanting to go back up to the feet, and Lemos, again, pieced her up. She got beat there. So it's like, it's hard to handicap and wager and rally behind Mackenzie Dern, a girl who's just time and time again showing in her recent fights that the fight IQ is just has not been there, has not been kind to her. Who knows what she's trying to do, what world she's living in, but if she wants to find success again, she has to go to that ground game plan, ground and pound, submission. She has to take Lupe Godinez to the ground. If not, it's going to be a repeat of Jessica Andrade, Amanda Lemos, all the girls that spark her and strike her and light her up on the feet and beat her. But I will say, from what I saw, outside of like the appealing looks, like Mackenzie Dern looks really, really good. She looks like she's in a really good spot health-wise, hopefully mentally, but like physically looking wise, she looks really, really good. This is probably like the best she's looked physical appearance and who knows how long. She's been the most cut up and chiseled, looked good on the scales. Her butt was looking juicy and plump. She had some muscle there, so maybe she's getting stronger with her squats or getting stronger in her game or her legs to help her ground game. So that's a good sign to see. But for whatever reason, people are leaning towards the Lupe Godinez side, and I'm not knocking for that. That's why I'm staying away from this fight. I lean Mackenzie Dern, but I just can't get all the way there behind it because, again, if she abandons that ground game and doesn't stick to it, which is her path of victory and success here, because that is Lupe Godinez's weakness. I mean, she has okay ground game. She has 2 wins by sub, 1 win by knockout, but she's an all-around striker. She's your typical, Mexican striker, boxing style. She doesn't have the full, complete, well-rounded ground game of like a full MMA style fighter. So, I mean, despite having more wins by sub than knockout, don't let that fool you. The people she submitted were absolutely trash cans. She submitted Elise Reed, who I don't even think is in the company anymore. If she is, she's about to literally get dropped here pretty soon. Girl, nothing impressive or write home about. And then her other submission win was against Silvana Gomez Juarez, which was her second fight literally in the UFC promotion, who is not even in the promotion or not even in the UFC anymore, I don't think. She last fought literally 2 years ago. So whoever knows what happened to her, but I'm going to assume she has been completely dropped and thrown by the wayside by Dana White and company. So, yeah, don't be fooled. Mackenzie Dern is all the way around the way better, the way better ground game submission artist. That is her strength here. So if she can't take Lupe Godinez to the ground and keep her there and they stay on the feet, Lupe Godinez might knock Mackenzie Dern out. So I would sprinkle some on Lupe Godinez by knockout. I would sprinkle some on Mackenzie Dern by submission or decision. But I'm going to expect this fight. If it stays on the feet, I'm worried that Mackenzie Dern can't survive to a decision and get to the cards. So I can't be mad at you if you take the Lupe Godinez side. I'm just going to stay away from this fight completely. I just can't get there. These 50-50 fights, I don't want any part of it in my parlay. I don't care if it juices my odds, if I do a Hail Mary parlay or something crazy like that. I do not care at all. But the only thing going for Mackenzie Dern is if she sticks to her game plan and that she looked good on the scales. Other than that, not much going for her. I mean, Lupe Godinez is coming off a loss to Verna Jandiroba, who just came off a victory over Amanda Lemos, and that was a title contender fight. The winner of that fight was most likely going to get the next title contending shot or close to it or just move up in the rankings. So that was a big fight. But before that, I mean, she won 4 in a row. She handed Baby Shark Tabitha Ritchie one of her 2 losses, but by split. You could argue Tabitha won that. That was close. I mean, you lost to Angela Hill, who that was somewhat early on in your career, not really, who Mackenzie Dern beat recently. So, I mean, the MMA math checks out there if you want to look at it that way. That Mackenzie Dern beat someone she didn't. And then she lost to Luana Carolina, which is a respectable loss. And then Jessica Penn, you lost by split decision and your UFC debut. I don't really look too much into UFC debuts because there's so much that goes into that you can't really knock somebody for that. But yeah, Mackenzie Dern coming off a loss to Amanda Lemos, and then you coming off to Jandiroba, Lupe Godinez, and then both girls end up fighting each other for a title contention fight. And then, Jandiroba just dominates Lemos with ease on the ground. So it's like, man, Lupe, in terms of that, if you want to MMA math that, Lupe Godinez did fight the better fighter and lose. But Mackenzie Dern also went the distance with Lemos. I mean, both girls did. So it's like, I'm going to leave Mackenzie Dern. I'm going to leave it at that and move on from that. Now we move on to our next fight. All right, hitting the home stretch here. We're coming down to the last 4 fights. We got Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chiesa. Your old man, your, uncle, typical drunk uncle, punch drunk bar fight here. But I don't think there's going to be much punching here by either side or either guy. And if there is going to be a lot of punching, it's going to be by Tony Ferguson. And it probably won't last long. And I'm just going to get straight to the point, straight to the chase. I'm leaning towards the Tony Ferguson, dog price. This big dog price. And it's like, I'm looking at this the same way I saw the Belal Muhammad, the Belal Muhammad Leon Edwards fight just this last weekend. And I know you guys are going to call me crazy and people are turned off by it. I know Tony Ferguson still has that, cult following. People deep down want to root for him, wish for him nothing but the best for the success, despite him being on a 7-win fight streak, or losing streak, 7-loss fight streak, excuse me. Don't misquote me on that. But he has this cult following on MMA Twitter, MMA fans everywhere. They love Tony. They beloved. They wish him nothing but the best, but they also wish that he would just hurry up and retire and get out of the UFC for the better interest of his health and his career and longevity and long-term wise health. You know what I mean? The CTE signs are visibly showing despite what anybody says. And I know they want to see him win, but it's like you got to hang it up and call it quits before it's too late. You have to do it while you can. And I know Dana White's pushing for it, but he just can't stop him or help himself. But Dana White himself has to just cut him and send him behind the woodshed. But I feel like if Tony Ferguson ever got cut, that, bro, he's just going to find a new promotion because he's a literal legend for what he's done in the sport. And someone's going to find him and pick him up. He's going to fight till he's like 48 years old. He might even get into boxing and get destroyed there. They always turns up that way because Tony Ferguson can get that payday with his name. But, hell, Jake Paul might fight Tony Ferguson, so who knows. But, yeah, this is your old man delight. We got 36-year-old Michael Chiesa versus a 40-year-old Tony Ferguson. I mean, a little bit of a height of differential, but not drastically. But Tony Ferguson has the 1-inch reach advantage. Conflicting striking stances, orthodox versus southpaw. But I mean, Michael Chiesa's strength is the ground game. Obviously, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. He has high IQ on the ground game. He sprawls. He's very active down there. And that's where he wants to be, is his wrestling. But Tony Ferguson can match him in wrestling. If not, I think he's the better wrestler, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, sprawler, in my opinion. He has more veteran savvy, 4 more years of experience, more, a way longer tenured UFC career, UFC resume with the company. I mean, yes, has a long career too. I mean, he was been fighting since the Ultimate Fighter days back in 2012. Actually, I think both fighters came on the scene at the same time. Maybe Tony Ferguson came on a little bit before that. I think Tony Ferguson has been around since like 2009, 2010, maybe a couple years before Chiesa. I double check that. He came in Ultimate Fighter 2011. So yeah, both these fighters came around the same time. So they both have lengthy careers, but despite coming in around the same time, Chiesa a little bit a year later, like for Tony Ferguson has like damn near double the fights as Chiesa, way more active, and it's a gift and a curse this late in your career, which that activity definitely has hurt Tony Ferguson. I mean, that face kick knockout against Michael Chandler changed him for the worse, and that'll do that to a man when you've been absolutely flatlined like that and your face destroyed. It changes anybody and everybody. But yeah, I really like Tony Ferguson here. He's landing way more volume, 5 strikes landed with damn near 50% accuracy, a little bit more accuracy for Michael Chiesa with barely only 2 strikes landed. He has way more takedown average. I mean, he's averaging 3 takedowns a fight. He's pretty accurate with half of them landing. Tony's not shooting for takedowns a lot because, I mean, recently he doesn't want to or need to or have to. They both have the same submission average, right? Both guys have the same submission output volume or actively looking for it, going for it there. And, I mean, Tony Ferguson's takedown accuracy is not too far off, but it's not as great as Chiesa. Chiesa doesn't really have heavy hands, and Michael Chiesa really doesn't move me. Tony Ferguson has the way better record, way better resume, 26-10 than Michael Chiesa's 8-7. I mean, despite Tony Ferguson being 40 years old, so 4 more years older, he barely only has 3 more losses than Chiesa, but he's also been way more active, way more productive, a former champ, has championship resume experience, and they're done that. I mean, I'm not the biggest Tony Ferguson fan at all. I could care less about Tony Ferguson. I was never one of his biggest fans or part of the cult following that he has that's on MMA fan bases and Twitter communities all around the world. I was never one of those guys, but I can respect the legend of the sport and legend of the game where he once sat and once was. El Cucuy's sick nickname. And so you guys are going to think I'm glazing or call me crazy, but yeah, Tony Ferguson is definitely a live dog in this fight. He wouldn't do this fight if he didn't think he could win. And honestly, the UFC wouldn't send him his fight if they didn't think he could win. This is kind of a trash can fight, in my opinion. And honestly, the odds makers and the betting odds that Vegas has come out with is really disrespectful to who Tony Ferguson is. And honestly, they're looking at recency bias, and I don't blame them. But it's like, if you really deep dive into it and delve into it, Michael Chiesa is not that far off from being behind Tony Ferguson or worse. I'm not the biggest Michael Chiesa fan at all. I could care less about him. I don't think he's that great of a fighter. I mean, he's whatever. Submission artist, right? Cool, whatever. 3 less losses than Tony Ferguson. And 7 of those losses, or out of 7 of those losses, 6 of them Michael Chiesa has been finished. Whereas, you're getting finished at a high rate in your loss, in the losses of your record. Whereas Tony Ferguson, out of his 10 losses, he wasn't really getting finished like that. Majority of his losses have come by way of decision. I mean, 5 of his 10 losses have been by finish, right? So half of his losses have been by finish. So 6 out of your 7 losses, you're finished, Michael Chiesa, whereas Tony Ferguson has been finished in half of his losses. So if you want to MMA math that or look at it that way, that's a different angle I would take. And Michael Chiesa, his only pathway to victory, since he doesn't have high volume striking or not crazy knockout power, he's never knocked out anybody. He's already lost by knocked out. He's been finished that way. So, and I don't think he's knocking out Tony Ferguson anytime soon. I mean, he can try all he wants, but he and I both know, him and Tony Ferguson both know that's not his strength of pathway of victory. I think Tony Ferguson has more pathway to victories here. Michael Chiesa, I'm just telling you, when I first saw this and looked over this card, I immediately jumped all over the odds. I literally saw Tony Ferguson's odds, and I was kind of gave like a one eye raised eyebrow, like, huh? Look, like super confused. And I just thought the betting odds were super disrespectful. And it's just all because of recency bias. So, yeah, so what? Tony Ferguson's on a 7-fight losing streak, but Michael Chiesa, not far off. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, and 2 of those 3 losses have been by finish. So, for a guy to be a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt submission artist, 2 of those 3 losses were by sub on the ground. He got submitted by Kevin Holland, who's got good ground game. He's a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu himself, right? And he got absolutely dominated and destroyed early on in the first round, got him put away quick. And then he got submitted in the first round by Vicente Luque. So it's like Michael Chiesa tries to go for takedowns or is taken down and gets put away early and away in fights. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he can survive and hang on against Tony. I don't think Tony puts him away early and is aggressive, getting an aggressive finish in the first round. If he does do that, then that's just a bad look on your part. If you're getting finished early on by a 40-year-old Tony Ferguson at the end of his career, then you just deserve to get cut by the UFC and never show your face again. But yeah, Michael Chiesa, 18-7 record, 0-1 by knockout, 11-5 by sub. So I mean, for a guy to be a high level, ground game guy, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, he doesn't have like an insane ground game record, 11-5 by sub. And I believe he never lost in regionals, had a lot of submission wins there. Comes into the UFC win and started out 4-1. And he lost by submission, or he won his first 2 fights by submission against trash cans who aren't with the company anymore. And then he submitted Colton Smith, who is another trash can who's not with the company anymore. So it's like the people he's finishing and putting away and submitting aren't like crazy high level names or fighters on his resume. But I mean, he got submitted by Jorge Masvidal, and the ground game is not even Jorge Masvidal's strength. Like you're getting submitted by an up and coming Jorge Masvidal, fresh off of like the street fighting scene, right? A guy who came up off of Kimbo Slice, sparking people. You get submitted by him early into his career back in 2013. Not a good look at all. Those odds probably had been crazy. Then a couple unanimous decision wins here against trash cans. You get TKO by Joe Lauzon. Okay. You submit Jim Miller. Okay, respectable win there early on in 2015. You beat Mitch Clark, so it's like, okay, whatever. You submit Beneil Dariush, and Beneil Dariush was barely coming onto the scene at that time, and Beneil Dariush isn't like a great, insane ground game guy. Like, he's okay. You lose by submission to Kevin Lee. Not a good look at all. You get submitted by Anthony Pettis, which is like, that's not even Anthony Pettis' strong suit. But again, that's a respectable loss. That's a big name. Then you submit Carlos Condit, a trash can. You go on a 4-fight win streak from 2018 to 2021, but you unanimously beat Neil Magny. Okay, whatever. Rafael Dos Anjos, respectable win, and Diego Sanchez. So like your only big wins recently have been Neil Magny and Dos Anjos, and that was 3 to 4 years ago. And nothing crazy ever since. I mean, you got submitted by Vicente Luque, unanimous decision against Sean Brady, who dominated you. The fact that Sean Brady couldn't put you away is impressive. And then Kevin Holland submits you. So it's like, yeah, Michael Chiesa, resume-wise, is like nothing going crazy or writing home about. And I know Tony Ferguson has a bad look and a bad rap right now because of that 7-fight losing streak. But you got to look at the people Tony Ferguson has fought. And when Tony Ferguson was at his peak of his fight game and what he was doing to people, putting them away in like, stylistic fashion and some big names too, held the belt, touched the belt, defended the belt, defended the belt. So it's like, bro, 7-fight losing streak, you get knocked out by Justin Gaethje, respect, back in 2020. You go the distance with Charles Oliveira, so surviving the madman that Charles Oliveira is on the come up is crazy. You go the distance with Beneil Dariush, like, okay, brutally knocked out by Michael Chandler, okay, he has that knockout power. Nate Diaz, you get submitted by, respect, Nate Diaz ain't bad. Bobby King Green, you get submitted by, not a good look. He almost survived and went the distance. He literally got submitted like with 5 seconds, 6 seconds remaining. So that was like a buzzer beater finish. And then you go the distance with a Hungry Wolf and Paddy Pimblett, which is insane and respectable. He was trying to put you away multiple times, and Paddy Pimblett is a submission artist. He just submitted Bobby King Green, a guy who submitted Tony Ferguson, and Paddy Pimblett couldn't submit Tony Ferguson. So it's like there's a little bit of MMA math checking out there. But yeah, Paddy Pimblett puts away Bobby King Green on the ground right away, quick, like literally out cold, submits him. And Paddy Pimblett was struggling to put away Tony Ferguson. He was surviving and sprawling away. So if Chiesa thinks he's going to submit Tony Ferguson despite like the recency of getting submitted twice, so has Chiesa. So either side's a live dog to get submitted. And I would argue that Tony Ferguson might have a better ground game. Like, I mean, you go look back at Tony Ferguson. He comes into the UFC back in 2011. He won the Ultimate Fighter, beats Aaron Riley. So he beats up on some guys. Same thing as Michael Chiesa, guys who aren't obviously with the company anymore or haven't survived as long. I mean, if you look at his peak, bro, he submitted Edson Barbosa. That's a phenomenal win at the peak in 2015. You know, beats Rafael Dos Anjos, submits Kevin Lee, a guy that submits for the belt, right? I think that was interim. A guy that submits, you know, Chiesa. So that's another piece of MMA math checking out right there. So you get submitted by Kevin Lee, but then Tony Ferguson submits Kevin Lee right back. A young Kevin Lee, too, which is impressive. Knocks out Anthony Showtime Pettis, which is nuts. Knocks out Cowboy Cerrone at Cowboy Cerrone's peak. And then before that, he goes, or not really Cerrone's peak. I think that was Cerrone's a little bit of his downcline. The start of his downcline, but still. And then you go on a 7-fight losing streak against young, hungry killers as a 40-year-old man. So it's like, you got to give Tony Ferguson the benefit of the doubt. So for the fact that these odds are plus 400 Tony Ferguson, I can never lay minus 500, minus 600 chalk juice with a guy like Michael Chiesa with what he's shown. He hasn't proved or shown anything warranting that much of a heavy favorite price. I think it's more of a disrespectful knock to Tony Ferguson because of recent times. Yeah, I'm going to lean Tony Ferguson, and I'm going to go a step further. And I think Tony Ferguson is a live submission dog here. I don't think this fight goes the distance. Someone's getting finished here. I mean, two old men, maybe they survive, but I think Tony Ferguson's hungry. He's going to try and go for the kill or be killed because, I mean, he has nothing to lose. He's going to go out on a limb or die trying, basically. That's his mentality at this point. But also, Tony Ferguson is looking appealing in the interviews. He's saying all the right things. He said that he already knows what Michael Chiesa's game plan, what he's going to do, that he's going to piece him up on the feet, and that Michael Chiesa, from getting pieced up on the feet, is going to shoot for a takedown. And he's warranting Michael Chiesa not to do that because he knows the takedown's coming. He's going to stuff the takedown and submit him and put him away. So he's already mentioned looking towards a submission. He goes, yeah, I know your type of style. I know you're a ground game artist, but I'm going to beat you at your own game. And then Tony Ferguson also came and said that this is the first time he's practiced sparring or done any sparring rounds in 7 years, and that he's done 150 rounds of sparring. And if anybody knows Tony Ferguson, his training regimen, even way before the David Goggin days, he's been a madman and crazy and pushing himself to the limits, doing insane workouts, testing himself with cardio. So cardio is never an issue with Tony Ferguson. So if Michael Chiesa wants to put away Tony Ferguson, it's definitely by submission. I don't think he gets it. I think Tony Ferguson can find a way to get a reversal here. Michael Chiesa's lazy, and Tony Ferguson looks good at his fighting age despite getting finished a lot in his 7-fight losing streak, and at 40 years old. He looks really good, you know, physically, like cardio-wise, and staying in fights. Whereas Michael Chiesa, he just looks old for 36-year-olds. Like, he looks older than Tony Ferguson out there, just quits and gives up easily and lets him get himself finished early on and put away in fights. But yeah, Tony Ferguson, I mean, his submission odds have opened up at plus 1,200 on most sportsbook, but on ESPN Bet, he's plus 900 to win by submission. And I believe on FanDuel, he's plus 1,000. So, I mean, fans are betting him to win by sub, and the sportsbooks are respecting it by lowering his price. So it's like, yeah, Tony Ferguson all day here, live dog. I think Tony Ferguson hops back on the victory train. Yeah, Tony Ferguson dropped all the way from plus 1,000, which was literally yesterday, to plus 850 now on FanDuel, which is absolutely crazy to talk about. So yeah, Tony Ferguson, live dog here by sub. Maybe Tony Ferguson ITD if you want to play a safer double chance prop there. You probably get like maybe +3 something, +2 something. I don't know, but I'm gonna assume because maybe it's even higher because his knockouts +1700, and they're saying if it goes the distance, it does favor Chiesa, which I semi agree with, but not really. Yeah, Tony Ferguson by sub, I like it. All right, coming up next, we are coming down the home stretch into the final 3 fights on the card in the main event. Now, this fight definitely caught my eye. Also, apologies, my laptop that I'm looking at the betting odds for you guys right in front of me, get a better look and a better in-depth look for you guys, died on me, so my apologies, I had to charge it. But yeah, this fight definitely intrigued me and caught my eye because this is one of those fights that stylistically should have happened a long, long time ago. And stylistically, it's actually a really, really good fight on paper and very intriguing, rightfully so. And the sports books and the sports betting odds, agree. I handicap this as a pick'em. I would probably lean towards Figueiredo as a slight favorite as well. Both guys are fan favorites. Both guys decent finish rates, big, solid, decent fight resumes. Some decent wins to their names, or I guess not decent, but pretty good wins to their names with finishes behind it. So when I first looked at this fight, I was looking towards the Chito Vera side, right? Chito Vera fight coming off of that, dominating loss in the, title defense, the title fight for Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley got his win back from Chito Vera, which they scored a TKO. And, Sean's like, I guess we can agree that was a fluke win or not a real win for Chito Vera. He proved it, whatever. It's 1-1. They even the score, whatever. But Chito Vera is probably one of the best chins, if not the best chins in the UFC. He's known for that. Never been knocked out. He's been literally, I don't even think he's ever been knocked down, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what the stat is on. I think I remember them saying at one point in the broadcast of the O'Malley fight that he's never been knocked down. He went to a knee, but it didn't count or they didn't score it that way. And he ate that nasty knee, and he said, and even Chito Vera said in his interview press conference that he said, man, fuck, that knee hurt. But he said what hurt even more was when he connected again with the follow-up punch later at the end of the fight. He said that hurt more than the knee. It didn't break anything. Everyone thought with a loud pop or snap that it was an orbital bone break, but he didn't. And Sean O'Malley was trying for that finish but couldn't get it. And then, Chito Vera exploited O'Malley's weakness, which is a body shot, body punch. We've seen where Peter Yan literally made, Sean O'Malley curl up with body shots. That's definitely his weakness. Chito Vera found success with it in the fight, but too little too late. He almost dropped Sean late in the fight. He hit him with a body shot pretty good, pretty clean, and Sean was like, curled up. And it was perfect timing because it was like the last couple of seconds. Had he landed a couple more flush shots, he probably could have dropped Sean and pieced him up again. It got a little scary at the end. But Sean came out victorious, defended his title. It is what it is. But yeah, I thought this fight should have happened years ago. This fight has been years in the making, but looking at it, I forgot Deiveson Figueiredo has moved up to the bantamweight division into 135. He's normally fighting at 125, and then he was struggling towards the end with 125, not finding any success. He didn't see any importance of it because he didn't have the belt anymore, and then he was losing his belt to Brandon Moreno. So he's like, you know what, screw up. We're going to move 135 where I'm comfortable at, where I feel stronger and natural at, and here we are, where he takes on Chito Vera, this is a great, fighting matchup. Like I said, the fight card makers did a good job of making this one. Like I said, both fan favorites, a guy with a good chin, Deiveson Figueiredo, who's an all-around flawless fighter, top to bottom, great stand-up game, great ground game, elite fighter. Chito Vera, not as much. Chito Vera is like more of like your typical street fighter. He'll down to scrap and throw hands. He's okay on the ground, nothing crazy. But both of these guys, typical Latin America, South America fighters. One guy from Ecuador, one guy from Brazil. There's not a big rivalry there, but anytime you get Latin countries fighting each other, it's basically war at that point. But yeah, Chito Vera with the reach advantage drastically, or actually not drastically, only 2.5 inches, but a big height advantage in 5'8" to 5'5". So Deiveson Figueiredo has been known as a smaller, boxier guy. He just built so stout like Henry Cejudo. So that could play in Marlon Chito Vera's favor if he's has the fight IQ to put together a game plan where he can keep Figueiredo at bay at distance and piece him up on the feet. I don't think he's gonna knock out Figueiredo. It's very possible he could get like a doctor stoppage if he can get like a cut, or hopefully not an eye poke that stopped the fight because that's happened to Figueiredo before. But if he can prevent Figueiredo from taking him down, Chito Vera may find success in this fight because that's where Figueiredo's strength is. That's where Chito Vera's weakness is, and we can all agree that Figueiredo is way, way better on the ground game. And Chito Vera, surprisingly, is the younger fighter. He looks super old. Some of these Brazilian fighters, I don't get it. Some of these Brazilian fighters age horribly because they just get absolutely pieced up in their fight career, and some just age perfectly fine and they don't crack. So it's like even Deiveson Figueiredo's on the one side where he's not cracking so far. He looks pretty good. 36 years old versus 31. So Chito Vera has the age advantage, has a 5-year age difference here. And when I first looked at this fight, I was obviously leaning toward Chito Vera. I'm a bigger Chito Vera fan. Not too big. I mean, I could care less about either of these guys. I'm a fan of both guys. I respect both guys, what they've done for the fight game, what they've done for the company, putting on exciting fights, big fights. But none of them are like my personal fan favorites or none of my personal favorite fighters right now. They're not even my top 5, top 10 fighters to watch. I'll root for them, I'll watch for them, which is why I'm really going to enjoy and like this fight a lot because, like, man, it looks beautiful on paper. But yeah, reach advantage, height advantage for Chito Vera, and age advantage here in the bantamweight 135 division. And, conflicting stances here with switch and orthodox, which Chito Vera, we know Deiveson Figueiredo is not knocking out Chito Vera. If he does, I will be shocked. Figueiredo has knockout power with the ground and pound, and he can put people away. That way, once they're taken to the ground, he can finish them. I just don't think that's going to happen. And Chito Vera, we both know he knows he's not going to let that happen or get to that point. And with his reach advantage, I think he can keep Figueiredo away from letting a knockout happen. Plus, with this chin, so Figueiredo's clear pathway to victory is on the ground game and submitting Chito Vera. So Chito Vera has decent takedown defense. If they worked on that in his fight camp, he could come out victorious here as a dog price. And honestly, who says he can't piece up Deiveson Figueiredo on the feet? I mean, it's very doable. He's been knocked out before by Brandon Moreno, and I think Chito Vera probably has more polished striking than Brandon Moreno. It's about even. I mean, I think Chito Vera has more polished striking because there's times where Brandon Moreno goes for drastic big swings and punches, tries to land and get crazy, and he gets counterpunched a lot and clipped. That's the one flaw and weakness in the game. But when he's on point, he's sharper on point. I think Chito Vera is more sharper on striking department than Brandon Moreno. And you guys kind of forget, like, Figueiredo is still getting familiar with the 135 bantamweight class, getting still acclimated and acquitted to it. And I think this is like his only second or third fight into the bantamweight 135 division. So it's like he still has to adjust for a whole new wide range of fighters than 125. Like, the flyweight division at 125 is okay. It's not insanely dominant. I mean, you have Pantoja, you have Moreno, but he's stepping away. You have, man, I mean, I can't even think off the top of my head really like of guys that are like alarm your shirt. You have Steve Erceg, which is Steve Erceg's pretty sick. That's one of the few. And then you have Kai Kara France, which is one of the few. But like, yeah, other than that, it's like, I think Mokaev, he was in 125 from what I remember. He got cut, and nobody wants him. And then Manel Kape's in 125, and Manel Kape's like, whatever. So it's like, Deiveson Figueiredo would have been able to bounce back at 125 and got the belt again and got acquitted and acclimated again. But he chasing, on to bigger and better things, trying to find success in 135 division. And he might find getting adjusted early on, he could struggle here. And this is one of the fights where stylistically, he could struggle if he can't get a hold of Chito Vera. I mean, Chito Vera is not shooting nowhere near the same takedown averages or volume as Deiveson Figueiredo. But I mean, they still have similar takedown accuracy. And Deiveson Figueiredo has a little bit more, submission volume, like, going for it. I mean, if we look at Deiveson Figueiredo, older guy, I think he has more fights in the UFC than Chito Vera. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm double checking real quick. I mean, Figueiredo came in back in 2017. I think Chito Vera came in maybe around the same time, which is crazy. So for a 5-year difference, both guys to come in at the same time, it's like, so it's not too insane. but let me double check. Chito Vera may have the more experience in the UFC. So Chito Vera did come in to the UFC back in 2014. So yeah, he has three more years worth of experience than Figueiredo in the UFC here. Yeah, so I mean, way more fights. I mean, he's way more active. I mean, he has 33 fights to his name, 23 9-1 record. Both guys have solid similar records, and then 23 3-1 for Figueiredo. So I mean, 33 fights compared to 27, not too much of a drop off, but 3-year difference, 6-year fight difference. Chito Vera has the experience edge. And Chito Vera is a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu guy, which is crazy label. I wouldn't really say that. I think he's more of a striker. He has the ground game that's okay, but it's, like I said, nowhere near the levels of Figueiredo, who has the complete Brazilian Jiu Jitsu wrestling aspect of his ground game. But yeah, Chito Vera, who's 3-2 in his last fights, with a split decision loss to Cory Sandhagen, which you could argue he could have won that. I mean, unanimous decision against Pedro Munoz. Okay, win. Knocked out Dominic Cruz, and then unanimous decision against Rob Font, who he absolutely destroyed and pieced up a guy like Rob Font. And you could argue Rob Font has a similar, fighting style as Figueiredo. Nowhere near the ground game, but similar aspects of striking in terms of ground and pound, trying to finish guys in that fashion. And Chito Vera pieced him up. I mean, Chito Vera split decision to Cory Sandhagen, who's in a title contention fight right now on the main event of the card with Umar Nurmagomedov, and arguably could have beat him, and then gets dominated by Sean O'Malley. So other than that, I mean, Chito Vera is looking decent recently, and Deiveson Figueiredo, who has, I believe, let me double check how many fights he has in the 135 division. But okay, so he has 2 fights in the 135 division against Rob Font, who he went the distance with, and he dominated Rob Font. And then he submitted Cody Garbrandt, which, I mean, Cody Garbrandt at this point, he's nowhere near the same Cody Garbrandt as his peak championship days. And he submitted him pretty easy in the second round. So, I mean, so far so good in the bantamweight division for Deiveson Figueiredo, 2-0. But this is Chito Vera's territory. He's coming into a guy with experience at the 135 weight division. I mean, not to say Rob Font and Cody Garbrandt doesn't, but I would say at this point in this current times, Chito Vera is a better fighter than both Cody Garbrandt and Rob Font. And that's not a crazy thing to say. But I mean, if you look at before that, he had a quadrilogy, one of the very few quadrilogies with Brandon Moreno, where he drew the first fight. He got submitted by Brandon Moreno with the second fight, which is crazy. Like, imagine getting submitted by Brandon Moreno, which those odds had been crazy. That's like when Alexa Grasso submitted Valentina Shevchenko. It was like, what? Wow, what just happened? You know what I mean? And then gets his belt back against Moreno, unanimous decision, and then Moreno gets a doctor stoppage with the big old cut and gash on Deiveson Figueiredo. So Deiveson Figueiredo has only been finished twice in his career. 2 out of his 3 losses have been by way of finish, and both times were against Brandon Moreno. So it's not out of the realm of possibility for Chito Vera to stop Deiveson Figueiredo. But in order to stop Deiveson Figueiredo to keep coming after you, trying to close the gap, trying to close the distance, and trying to shoot for those takedowns, he's got to play the range game. Marlon Chito Vera has to use his leg kicks to his advantage, has to use his reach advantage to his advantage, and start piecing up Deiveson Figueiredo on the feet. So, I mean, the odds makers like Deiveson Figueiredo here, which is kind of weird in a way, in a little bit. It's kind of telling, to say the least, because it's like, okay, they must know something we don't. The older fighter with the less reach advantage, and they're favoring, Deiveson Figueiredo. I don't know if they're trying to go off recency. Sometimes these odds makers, they go off recency bias, and they say, like, oh, Chito Vera got pieced up by Sean O'Malley. Like, who says Deiveson Figueiredo can't do the same thing? Like, they're trying to MMA math the thing. And sometimes it works out that way, yes, but, sometimes it doesn't. And I think this is one of those times where Deiveson Figueiredo is going to find trouble trying to find his range and trying to shoot for takedowns. And if he tries to, I think Marlon Chito Vera is like okay enough to get a couple of takedown stops. If not, Deiveson Figueiredo can probably get a takedown or 2. My guess is he gets 2 takedowns, and I think on Prize Picks or Underdog Fantasy, the prop for Deiveson Figueiredo takedowns is 1.5. I feel like if he can take down Chito Vera and keep him at bay, and keep him there and hold him there and not let Chito Vera get back up to the feet, he'll probably win on a boring decision by laying on him. I don't think he submits Chito Vera and gets the finish. I don't see it happening. And actually, let me double check. I don't think Chito Vera has been submitted or finished ever in his UFC career. Let me double check real quick. I could be mistaken. From what I think, because I know he's never been knocked out, but I don't remember if Chito Vera has ever been submitted from what I know. So, yeah, I mean, Chito Vera is 10-0 by sub, so he's never been finished ever once in his UFC career. And Chito Vera said himself when he hopped off the stage that he was going to knock out Deiveson Figueiredo, piece him up, and send him back to the 125 flyweight division, send him back to hacking back to where he came from. So we'll see if he holds up to his words and his mouth and end up to his end of the bargain. Yeah, I think Deiveson Figueiredo, if he doesn't get those takedowns and lay on Chito Vera to a boring decision, he's gonna have trouble finding success on the feet and get stonewalled here. So I like Chito Vera money line. Not gonna make my official play. Again, one of those 50-50 fights where it's not making my official card an official stay away spot. But if I had to lean aside, it would be dog or pass here with Chito Vera. And I think Chito Vera is live for a knockout. If not, double chance Chito Vera decision or knockout. I think Chito Vera wins by split decision. We could see a robbery here. I mean, being in Abu Dhabi, this is like a area where it doesn't favor either fighter. And maybe, Chito Vera is trying to get a little bit of the hometown crowd buff. And because he was wearing, I don't know what you called those, but he was wearing like the white dress suit thing that they wear over there in the Middle East with like not like a turban, but it's like a head wrap, like cape thing. I don't want to like discredit or dishonor or disrespect their culture or whatever. I'm not educated enough to know the name of it. But yeah, Chito Vera was wearing that at the press conference and the face-offs and the weigh-in. So maybe he's trying to sway that home crowd to start rooting for him and cheering him on to, help him win on the scorecards. But yeah, we're going to go Chito Vera here and we'll move on. Next fight. And we move on to the second to last fight, the co-main event of this event. We got Shara Magomedov versus Michelle Olejushek. Now, here's the thing. I think this fight was made on a last-second notice from what I've heard or what I've known. Because I think Michelle Olejushek was supposed to fight somebody completely different, somebody else, and his opponent pulled out. And Shara Magomedov has stepped in on short notice and took this fight. I think like on a week short notice, and yet he's still the heavy favorite. Or it might be vice versa. I think Shara Magomedov was scheduled to fight somebody else, and Michelle stepped in. Someone is stepping in on short notice. I am not entirely too sure here. Or maybe this was a makeshift last-second fight to round out and fill out the card, and both guys agreed to it and said, hey, But yeah, I don't think this is a good fight stylistically at all for Michelle Olejushek. I'm not too high with Michelle Olejushek. Still don't know what to make of the guy. Another one of the fighters who so far in his UFC career has just been up and down roller coaster. When he wins in, fantastic fashion, stylistic fashion with his knockouts because he has heavy hands, heavy power. He can finish and put people away. But the ground game is just where he absolutely struggles. He is horrendous on the ground game. 1-6. I don't know what he's doing. He's not training for it. I don't know how he hasn't figured it out yet. At this point, you would think like some guy who struggles so much on the ground, he would make it a focal point to actively, to work on his ground game, especially in the 185 middleweight division where there's a lot of killers out there that with great ground game and well-rounded complete fighters. And Shara Magomedov is another one of those fighters. But to be fair, Shara Magomedov is one of the few Dagestani fighters that actually want to stand and bang and have a stand-up game and strike and trade back and forth with you, which is absolutely crazy because, the dude's literally blind in one eye. So the fact that he wants to stand and bang and strike with just one eye and is actually finding success and, being successful with it, it's working, he's winning, it's just absolute insanity to me. It's absolutely crazy. Now, Michelle Olejushek, an okay record at 19-8, 14-1 by knockout. So he has a high finish rate, and by way of knockout, but he is 1-6 by sub, absolutely horrendous. So 6 out of his 8 losses has been finished on the ground. 1 of his 8 losses, he's been knocked out. So 7 out of his 8 losses, he's been finished. I expect the same thing here. I like Shara Magomedov. I will lay the chalk juice on Shar Magomedov. There's no way I see him losing. Flawless 13-0 record, undefeated. I think he keeps undefeated status. This should be an easy cakewalk fight for him. I don't see at any point where Shar Magomedov can struggle with Michelle Oleksiejczuk, unless Michelle Oleksiejczuk just lands a clean right hand or a clean hook punch that flatlines Shar Magomedov, or just like, exposes his chin and makes him wobbly and stunned, and he absolutely pounces and hops all over the opportunity to put away Michelle or Magomedov. But Magomedov actually has a decent chin. I haven't seen him get like wobbled or stunned before. And if he has, he does a good job of bouncing back with switching it up, going to his ground game. Your typical Dagestani Russian fighter guy, ending in Av, your ending in last name ending in B. So a great high IQ fighters. There's some small holes, small pokes, small flaws in his game, but he's only getting better and better. He has a young UFC career. He's still fairly fresh and early on into his career, so he's only getting better and learning. And Michelle Oleksiejczuk is on the decline, right? Roller coaster, every win so now and then, but then finds these like rough patches where he loses, and he loses badly. And I see him continuing his losing streak here. And I respect and honor the high activity, right? I know the company likes high activity, but fighters that are staying active to put on fights and fill out cards, Dana White and the company appreciate people like that, but it does you no good if you're not victorious or successful, taking these fights on short notice or trying to stay active and fight 2, 3, 4 times a year and multiple times a year. That's how you work your way into getting cut on the roster and cut out of the UFC. And we could see that here with Michelle Oleksiejczuk, a guy who has found okay success, nothing over the top success. I mean, been in the UFC since 2017, so somewhat of a veteran, so 7 years with the company. He came in no contest against Khalil Roundtree, right, in his UFC debut. Goes on to win 2 fights, loses 2 fights, wins 2 fights, loses, wins 2 fights, loses, won a fight, and then loses 2. So it's like he wins, loses 2, or wins 2, loses 1. So he's just like win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. So it's like this guy is just continue up and down. Like he's just hanging on by a thread, surviving, staying with the company. But yeah, a guy who's already fought twice this year, and I believe Shar Magomedov has fought once this year already. So both guys fairly active. I think both guys are taking this fight on short notice. But it favors Magomedov with a guy who's, despite Michelle Oleksiejczuk being more active, he's not being successful in his activity. And Michelle Oleksiejczuk is literally coming off back-to-back losses by way of sub. He got submitted by Kevin Holland literally first round in the first minute, like super easily. Broke it. He says he didn't break his arm, didn't tear any ligaments or damage, but his elbow was bent backwards the other way. Like Kevin Holland had him, and he was looking at the ref to stop the fight. He wasn't stopping the fight. He's like, okay, you want me to stop it? Cranked it even more, and just got him. Just literally almost. I thought he broke his arm. He said he didn't. Then got submitted by Michelle Pereira. So back-to-back killers on the ground. But yeah, that's, like I said, literally Michelle Oleksiejczuk's weakness is the ground game. And, he's knocked out Chidi Ojapwani, nothing to write home about. Knocked out Cody Brundage, okay, whatever. Knocked out Sam Alvey, okay, whatever. Shamil Gamzatov, okay, whatever. Modestas Bruskaskis, he went to the split decision with. Got submitted by Jimmy Crute. Like, what are we doing getting submitted by Jimmy Crute? Got submitted by OSP, like, okay, whatever. Like, just not good losses on your resume. Not respectable good losses on your resume. And your wins, like, his wins are nothing to write home about. You lost to old Dustin Jacoby. So it's like, man, this guy is on the out and out. And Michelle Oleksiejczuk at one point in time was showing so much promise with his knockouts. With a high knockout rate. But that can only get you so far and do so much when you're fighting fighters that are so much advanced and so much more involved than you. And more well-rounded, complete fighters. So, like, both fighters, same age, like 1 year age difference, so nothing there. Same, height. Same weight, sorry. Shar Magomedov has a 2-inch height advantage with a 1-inch reach disadvantage, so basically same reach. Conflicting fighting stances, orthodox versus southpaw. Michelle Oleksiejczuk lands pretty good volume with decent accuracy, but here's the thing, bro. Shar Magomedov has insane volume with his strikes, with his, he's, landing with his strikes at 7 strikes per minute. Insane volume output, but also 80% accuracy. He's landing flush, landing clean, despite being blind in one eye. Dude's a literal sniper and has some pretty good power. And this is one of the respectable Dagestani fighters that actually wants to stand and bang. He doesn't look for wrestling, but if it has to go to the ground game, and if it has to go to wrestling and being a submission artist, he will do whatever it takes to win and get the finish. If that's where the fight has to go, has to be. Like I said, he'll do whatever it takes to win. He wants to be the best of the best. He wants to be the top of the top, eventually be a title contender, a title holder, and he has a trajectory to get there. And right now, he's trying to seize every moment, every fight, every opportunity, because this is his window of opportunity. Between 30 and 34 is like your 4-year window, 4-year gap to obtain the belt and try to defend it a little bit before you start trajectorying. You start hitting your downcline and getting out of your prime and out of and making your way out of the company. So right now is his window of opportunity to seize it, and he only has 2 fights in the UFC, so he's trying to build up his strength of resume, trying to fast track and get up on the rankings, put people on notice in the 185 division, start competing and getting those bigger name fights, those ranked fights to get in ranking, to start working his way up towards the title and contending for the title. I mean, 2-0 in the UFC with respectable wins. His UFC debut, he beat Bruno Silva, which is actually a pretty solid win in your debut. A guy that has a great, long resume, a lot of fights underneath his belt in his career, a respectable 185er, goes the distance with him, right? And then he fights Tricoli and just absolutely knocks him out in the 3rd round. Antonio Tricoli, which is another great fighter. I mean, both Brazilian guys, and he pretty much manhandled them, dominated them, and put them away. So you got to respect it for what it is. He knocked out Tricoli, which is dope. So, but here's the thing. With Michel Oleksiejczuk being so awful on the ground and struggling, I know Shar Magomedov is one of those, Dagestani fighters that doesn't want to wrestle or doesn't look to take it there. I feel like if he can clip Michel Oleksiejczuk, put him on his ass, put him on his back on the ground, he can just ease his way into him, lay into him, and get a submission finish here. So I actually really like, Shar Magomedov by sub, and people are gonna call me crazy for this. I think the submission opportunity is there. He's 13-0 with 11 of his wins coming by knockout. So maybe he can counter Michel Oleksiejczuk. Maybe Michel Oleksiejczuk just comes in wild, swinging like crazy. He steps to the side and pieces him, right, and clips him and puts Michel Oleksiejczuk away. But I mean, Michel Oleksiejczuk has only been knocked out once, so he has a decent chin with heavy hands. So I mean, if he really wants to, he can take this to the ground and find success, because Michel Oleksiejczuk is just not a threat at all on the ground. And despite Shar Magomedov, 11 of his 13 wins by finish, all by knockout, right? I mean, his submission is plus 1,500. And I don't mind sprinkling a long shot on Shar Magomedov by sub, because that is just probably like the easiest path. Maybe Shar Magomedov wants a challenge for himself and not make it look too easy by just going straight to the ground, just submitting Michel Oleksiejczuk, who's just awful on the ground. And maybe because he can get a bonus pay, he can get fight of the night by getting a finish that way. Maybe he wants a more flashy knockout for the fans over there in the Middle East, and just absolutely flatlining Michel Oleksiejczuk would be sick. I mean, his knockout is minus 115, so I mean that's where the sports books are leaning anyways. They do not like the fight go to the distance. I agree. I think there's going to be a finish here, and I'm all over Shar Magomedov. That's going to be my safe play here. Shar Magomedov money line. Shar Magomedov is a parlay piece. Shar Magomedov ITD, and if you want to sprinkle some on his knockout price at minus 115, but it doesn't hurt to look at his submission price at all for what it is. Just because I know Magomedov is capable of being a decent wrestler. And he doesn't even have to be a semi-decent wrestler to finish Michel Oleksiejczuk on the ground. So it's like, you know what I mean? It is what it is. But yeah, Shar Magomedov, and we move on to the final fight on the card. And in the words of Bruce Buffer, and now we have made it to your main event of the evening. We are finally here, the main event the fight before was the co-main event, but this is the main event, where people are all here for. Cory Sandhagen taking on this fight, which is Umar Nurmagomedov, to close it out and round out this beautiful card. This is actually an underrated card. this card is arguably better than the card last weekend of UFC 304. And originally, that was what the fight was supposed to be. So instead of Shar Magomedov versus Michelle Oleksiejczuk, it was supposed to be, from what I remember, it was a complete swap. It was a complete different co-main. So I believe it was supposed to be another old head veteran fight. Let me double check. It was supposed to be like, I don't remember, but it was another bunch of like veteran savvy fighters, like older fighters. Oh, that's who it was. It was originally supposed to be Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz, and then they called it off and had to be completely moved. I don't know if it was because of like visa issues, something fell through because of something like that. Something must have happened. I don't know if it was like on Nick Diaz's side or what, but yeah, somebody had visa issues where they couldn't make it happen or couldn't make it happen to work. So in steps Shar Magomedov and Michelle Oleksiejczuk. That was the replacement fight. There you go. I figured. But yeah, we got Cory Sandhagen in the bantamweight 135 bantamweight division with Umar Nurmagomedov. Now this is going to be a very exciting fight because, again, like they say, style makes fights, and this is the one fight that does happen, or does make style make fights happen. So Cory Sandhagen obviously is going to be confident in himself. He believes he can win. I mean, he wouldn't take this fight if he didn't, and respectfully, rightfully so, he's earned this right to have this title contention fight because from what I've heard through different press conferences and interviews from both fighters and both guys, is everyone wants to see Cory Sandhagen, versus Sean O'Malley, kickboxer on kickboxer, both strikers, stand-up guys, right? Both have, decent ground games offensively, decent, ground game takedown defense. I mean, they haven't really been tested. We haven't really seen it. And, I mean, Cory Sandhagen has been submitted by Aljo. But, yeah, fans for a while have been wanting to see Cory Sandhagen fight Sean O'Malley. So this is the opportunity to do so because stylistically, that's like the most even, fair matchup people have seen. And it would make for a beautiful, complete striking masterpiece, right? And Cory Sandhagen's like, yeah, the fans want me to fight Sean O'Malley for the title. I believe I can beat Sean O'Malley for the title, and it makes it for a great fight. So, yeah, and then Umar Nurmagomedov has been told by Dana White and the company that if he wins this fight here, he just has to win, whether it doesn't matter by finish or decision. Just win, and you're in for the title fight, title contention. So this is a title contention fight because, like I said, fans want to see O'Malley Sandhagen. So if he wins, why not make that fight next after the Merab fight, depending on who wins? And then Umar Nurmagomedov said Dana White literally told him that if he wins, that he's next in line for the winner of Sean O'Malley versus Rob for the title. So, I mean, we could literally see Umar Nurmagomedov be a title holder by the end of this year, if not early next year. Because let's say Merab beats Sean, that's going to make for a very interesting fight because, I mean, it might be a boring fight to many because it's a wrestler's deluxe. I mean, Umar Nurmagomedov can scrap with the hands and fight. I mean, he's knocked people out before on his resume. So as Cory Sandhagen, he has flashy knockouts. I mean, so far his only highlight really is that flying knee, and that's about it. But I mean, he has other knockouts too as well, highlight reel knockouts. But in recent times, that's been like the clean flush landed knockout that is played over and over again in highlight film. But yeah, Nurmagomedov 17-0, flawless up into this point, looking like Khabib. He's coming out of Khabib's camp. He's coming out of the American Kickboxing Academy, so he is one of the few Russian Dagestani fighters that's a stand-up guy. But he also, being with Khabib so long, has transitioned into just being a wrestle monster. Just wants to wrestle the hell out of you. And I mean, 7 wins by sub. This guy, so far in his UFC career, is literally winning by submission or decision. And that's probably where I lean here. That's your safest play, parlay play. I don't see why it goes anywhere else. Cory Sandhagen's definitely a threat here. And, Umar Nurmagomedov opened up at like I think it was like minus 290 at some point, like minus 285. And he's absolutely shot up and sprung up to minus 340, which is pretty much nuts. And, I mean, all the money is coming in on Umar Nurmagomedov, and the line is moving in his favor more and more. So the books are agreeing with like the sharps coming in on the Umar Nurmagomedov side. And Cory Sandhagen opened up as like a respected underdog, which was like plus 185, plus 175, something like that. And he's shot all the way down to plus 260. So, I mean, I just see this. I mean, despite Cory Sandhagen having the 3-inch height advantage, I mean, him being the striker, Umar Nurmagomedov is the more well-rounded, complete fighter in terms of ground game and striking. I would give the striking department towards Cory Sandhagen, obviously. I mean, 3-inch height advantage, but only 1-inch reach advantage, so not really a big deal. Kind of like washes out in the gates. Yeah, 17-0 flawless Umar Nurmagomedov here out of Khabib's team. And it has also been announced that Khabib made it known that he will be backed in the corner against Umar Nurmagomedov. Someone has to like dig deep or do their research and find the stat or something. I want to know what the stat is when having Khabib in your corner. What's the fighter's record? It has to be like an insane record. They have to be like 30-0. They have to be undefeated or something like that, if not close to undefeated with like a couple losses, like 30-3, 40-3, some insane, astounding record. Like I feel like, when Khabib is in your corner or having Khabib in your corner, it automatically shoots up your win rate percentage to like 95, damn near basically guaranteed to win. Like I feel like he has a 97% win rate. So that's tough. Godspeed to Cory Sandhagen with a guy like Khabib, who is most of his game plan is wrestling. But as of recently, a lot of fighters that have been working with Khabib, he's come up. He's one of like probably the best, highest fight IQ fighters when it comes to making adjustments and changes. I mean, he's turned Islam Makhachev into a great, ground game wrestler. They're all great ground game wrestlers coming out of Khabib's camp. But what's crazy is they found a way to also make them great stand-up fighters as well, which they have the complete package, the complete tools to be good on both the ground and both on the feet. I mean, Islam Makhachev's boxing has only gotten better on the feet, and it's improved drastically. He hung in there with Dustin Poirier. He landed some clean shots on Dustin, broke his nose or whatever, something like that. So that was impressive to see. Muhammad was piecing up and looking good in the striking department versus Leon Edwards in his title win. And he literally said he watched tape with Khabib, and Khabib literally gave him a breakdown game plan round by round on what he needed to do on how to beat Leon Edwards, and was just successful. And Khabib wasn't even in his corner for that fight, and he still came out victorious, right? Absolute domination. Umar Nurmagomedov has some knockout wins to his name, and so he's not bad on the feet either. I mean, he knocked out Barcelos, like literally flatlined him, and then just wham, cleaned him up on the ground. Was going to keep punching him until they stepped in because he thought it wasn't over. But so far, he's 17-0 with he's still fresh and young and early on into his UFC career. He only has 5 UFC fights to his name, and obviously a perfect, flawless 5-0. And he was in the PFL a couple of times, and then he fought in regionals where he was at. I mean, the Dagestan, guerrilla fighting GFC company regionals over there. I mean, he submitted Sergey Morozov, trash can, right? Not really with the company anymore, I don't think. He submitted Brian Kelleher, trash can. I think he's with the company, but he's on his way out. Nate Maness, he won by unanimous decision, and then knocked out Rayone Barcelos, and then won by unanimous decision against Begzat Almakan, another trash can. So it's like, doesn't have the greatest resume. That's kind of what happens in combat sports anywhere and everywhere. Like, you're not going to, majority of the time, you're not supposed to get fed to the wolves. You're supposed to build up your resume, build up your experience, especially when you make a big jump to the top level like UFC. Like, I tell you people all the time, the UFC to the next level corporation or fighting company is a huge, drastic difference. This is why they say the UFC is the best of the best in the world. And they're obviously actively trying to find ways to make their roster better over and over again. This is probably overall, top to bottom, the most competitive, level of talent pool in the UFC, in the history, is the best that it is. I mean, you could say all-time greats like George St. Pierre that paved the way, Anderson Silva in the past, sure, but these guys were also GOATs and dominant for so long because their level of competition was nowhere near their level, whereas I feel like anything can happen in this UFC world because the difference in levels is not too far off from the next guy. Whereas back then, if you were the number 5 fighter, you were the number 5 fighter fighting the champ for a reason because you were that far off, and the champion would defend the belt easily and prove it. Whereas I feel like the number 5 fighter in any weight division can have a good chance and beating the title holder. So that's how, complete and well-rounded it is. So I know people are going to jump out and attack and be like, oh, well, who the hell has Umar Nurmagomedov fought? He's fought a bunch of trash cans and won. 3 of his 5 wins have been by way of finish inside the distance, 2 by sub, 1 by knockout, right? He's never been finished. He's never lost. 2-0 by knockout, 7-0 by sub, right? And it's like, okay, this is a big step up in competition for Umar Nurmagomedov, right? He's never fought anybody in his career this level or caliber of fighter like Cory Sandhagen, right? Let alone in the UFC, he's fought a bunch of trash cans. So this is a drastic step up and jump. I mean, I don't know if Umar Nurmagomedov is ranked. If he is, he's definitely has to be like in the middle of the pack, which is crazy because he jumped up the rankings so fast for not having like a great fight resume. But that's just kind of where the bantamweight division is lying right now. And then Cory Sandhagen, same amount of wins, but 4 losses. Cory Sandhagen has been finished before, but only one time. He's only been finished one time and submitted one time in his career, and that was against Aljamain Sterling. And then since that loss, it just sparked like some demon in him to just be an animal and beast. And he said that on Joe Rogan's podcast. He literally came out and said like, okay, he finished me, submitted me, like dominated me. And then watching him, celebrate the way he did, dance on me, was embarrassing and a shitty, feeling. And I'm going to make sure that never happens again. I'm going to like destroy and dominate every opponent in my way. And then he bounced back and comes with back-to-back knockout wins. But then he hits a little stonewall. He loses by split decision to TJ Dillashaw, who TJ Dillashaw before the injuries was like a beast, and then he fell off because he has like fucked up shoulders now or whatever. So TJ Dillashaw's out. That's kind of a irrelevant fight now. So but at the time, the split decision loss isn't a bad loss to knock on your resume. And then you lose the interim title or the title to Peter Yan. You get a title shot, and you got dominated and unanimously lost. He's surviving and going the distance. You beat Song Yadong by doctor stoppage. I'm not too high on Song Yadong. A good win, nonetheless, right? But Song Yadong is like nothing to go crazy over. And then you beat Chito Vera by split decision. You could argue was a little bit of robbery. And then you unanimously beat Rob Font, which is like, okay. But yeah, so before that Aljamain Sterling's submission loss, you pretty much were beating cans. Other than Mario Batista. Mario Batista's a decent win. You submitted him. So, 3-1 by sub. Cory Sandhagen is decent on the feet. He can sprawl, hold his own a little bit. But for only so long can you tread in deep waters. And Aljamain Sterling exposed him. And took his back and submit him with ease. So, to say that he can't survive and roll around with Nurmagomedov is pretty blasphemy and crazy. But like I said, this is a 5-round fight. And when he fought Aljamain Sterling, I believe that was a 3-round fight. And Aljamain Sterling put him out away early on in the first round, like a minute or so in, or late first round. A 5-round fight. He does have main event experience, right? Cory Sandhagen. And he is a 5-round fighter. He has the style to last that long, the cardio to last that long. And I believe his last 5 fights have all been main event 5-round fights, and he's gone the distance in all of them except one where he got the doctor stoppage against Song Yadong in the 4th round. So it's like he's been the distance. He survived deep waters before, but getting put away early against Aljamain Sterling, right, against a guy, I think Umar Nurmagomedov has just as good wrestling, if not levels above Aljamain Sterling, probably better wrestling than Aljamain Sterling. I would have to see them fight on paper and wrestling to see how that goes. But yeah, I think at this point in both guys' careers, Umar Nurmagomedov has better wrestling than Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling puts you away quick and early. I know you have the experience to go 5 rounds, but treading deep waters with a Dagestan wrestler for so long can only last so long. I'm going to play it safe. I like the Umar Nurmagomedov side as a money line piece, as a parlay, as a safe play. You want like a little bit, cents or change off the top for a parlay piece to get you better odds on your parlay for a long shot or something like that. I would do double chance Umar Nurmagomedov by decision or submission. I know it's chalk. I don't see him knocking out Cory Sandhagen with Cory Sandhagen being being the taller fighter, he'd have to hit up towards him, which is not good for Umar Nurmagomedov because, I mean, if you're reaching up at somebody and punching upwards, this leaves everything wide open. And Cory Sandhagen is a guy who throws in barrages, throws in flurries, throws in high volume exchanges. And if you leave yourself susceptible and open, he can piece you up and tag you up. Do I think Cory Sandhagen knocks out Umar Nurmagomedov? No. Has Umar Nurmagomedov's chin been tested? Not really. It hasn't had to because the fight literally goes to the ground before it has a chance to. But I mean, Cory Sandhagen, he is 3-2 in his last 5 on a currently 3-fight win streak. But he was on that little 2-fight skid. And, you know, I'm looking at this fight and thinking, like, can Cory Sandhagen find success in the striking department? Maybe. But he would have to knock Umar Nurmagomedov's clean chin off, find the perfect button. And even if he does land flush, I really don't think it puts Umar completely out unless he's like fully flatline. Then that's it. But if he like stuns him, wobbles him, or puts him on his ass on his back, Cory Sandhagen's not gonna fall into that trap and go into the ground with Umar Nurmagomedov because that's literally gonna save him. You put him on his back and you lay into him and invite him into his trap. That just helps Umar Nurmagomedov, and I think Cory Sandhagen knows that. Like if he puts him on his back, he's gonna let him stand back up, try to find his feet or his chin again. So to say Cory Sandhagen can't knock out Umar Nurmagomedov is a stretch. If I see it happening, it's highly a doubt because with the fight IQ with Umar and having Khabib in your corner, Khabib's not going to let that happen to you or get exposed. You're going to have a high, heavy wrestling output game plan. I would take on Prize Picks or, any of your sports books, I would take Umar takedowns over whatever it is. Him and Deiveson Figueiredo parlay it. And I'd probably take Tony Ferguson under 28.5 strikes because I think that fight's going to be a huge ground sprawl and immediately go to the ground and get finished early or just heavy wrestling for the 3 rounds. So I don't think there's going to be high, striking output. But anyways, that's for another day there. But if you want a little Prize Picks parlay or play there, I would play those 3 legs together. That'd be a good look. And if you can get a reasonable line on Mackenzie Dern takedowns, that might be a good look as well. But yeah, I mean, Khabib's in your corner. I don't see Cory Sandhagen getting knocked out by Umar Nurmagomedov. That's not his pathway to victory, and vice versa. I don't see either fighter getting knocked out because I see heavy wrestling for Umar to not let that happen. And I see Cory Sandhagen being the taller fighter, using his length with kicks, with striking to keep Umar Nurmagomedov away and at bay. If I were to lay a prop here, I think this fight finds a way to go to the distance. If not, I think Umar Nurmagomedov puts away Cory Sandhagen late in the fight, like anywhere between round 3 and later, probably more like round 4 or 5. I think he can submit or tap Sandhagen. But if Sandhagen can keep it on the feet, keep him at bay, force him and just sprawl around with Umar Nurmagomedov, I think this goes to decision, and I believe Umar Nurmagomedov at one point by decision was plus 100. It's plus 120 now here. So yeah, the only clear pathway to victory for Umar Nurmagomedov is by submission or decision. They like this fight to go over 3.5 rounds, and the fight to go the distance is basically a pick'em. So my guess is the books are a little skeptical in that pricing. They suspect a late finish for Umar in rounds 4 or 5, maybe. There's a chance there. But yeah, the pathway for victory for Cory Sandhagen is either a knockout or if you can't knock him out, piece him up on the feet and win by decision that way. But yeah, Khabib in your corner, like I said, for like the 18,000th time, you're not losing, bro. And you're also another fighter ending in V in your last name, Av or Ev, in Abu Dhabi. That's also added into your, handicapping there. So I would parlay Umar Nurmagomedov as my official play. And there you guys have it. That's going to round out my UFC Fight Night for Sandhagen Nurmagomedov taking place in Abu Dhabi. The full fight card, every fight top to bottom. If I were you to give you my official card here, my parlay, my safe parlay here, I'd probably do Sedriques Dumas to start it off the card. Viktoriia Dudakova. This is all money line, by the way, no props. Oof. Shamil Gaziev. Let's throw Tony Ferguson there because I know this is a parlay, but sprinkle a little bit of Tony Ferguson in the parlay for some long shot action. So that's what we got: 1, 2, 3, 4 fights so far in a parlay. Shara Magomedov and then Umar Nurmagomedov. That 6-leg parlay, if Tony Ferguson can clutch up and come through as such a big underdog, you probably can get a respectable, decent payout here. You can probably get, let's take a look real quick. Let's take a look. We can get Sedriques Dumas money line, Victoriia Dudakova, Shamil Gaziev, Tony Ferguson, right? Lean that way. Shara and Umar Nurmagomedov. I mean, you get those 6 fighters right there. Tony's literally carrying that parlay because we're all taking heavy juice favorites there besides Viktoriia. You get plus 2,581 on there. So a $10 bet, I mean, $258. But if you're a high stakes wager person and you want to blow $100 on a little 6-leg parlay, you can win freaking $2,000 right there in the start of your day, depending on where you live. Because this is a 10 a.m. start time for me in Mountain Standard Time, Pacific Time 9 a.m. and then East Coast 12. So probably by like 6 o'clock at night. Well, I mean, the main card starts at noon, it says. It's probably going to get pushed back most likely to like 1, 2 o'clock. But yeah, I mean, by dinner time, you could walk away with $2,000 and have yourself a good Saturday night. You know what I mean? Probably go to this casino if you live close to one and play a little bit of roulette and test your luck. But yeah, I mean, this is a good card with some great value. There's definitely a lot of live dogs here. If you want a long shot parlay, I would say Sedriques Dumas, inside the distance, Rolando Bedoya, Viktoriia Dudakova by sub, Jordan Vucenic moneyline, Shamil Gaziev, ITD, Alonzo Menifield moneyline, Elvis Brenner by knockout, Mackenzie Dern by submission or decision, Tony Ferguson submission, Chito Vera moneyline or decision, I guess, if you want to go that far, Magomedov ITD or I guess knockout, Cory Sandhagen, and Umar Nurmagomedov submission or decision, or Umar Nurmagomedov for plus money by decision. I mean, you can get, it was opened up at plus 100, it's moved up to plus 115 now. So there's speculation that he can get a late finish. So you're banking on if Cory Sandhagen can find those deep waters. But yeah, if you wanted to do a long shot parlay, I believe probably do like a 10 to 11 leg, stay away from a couple of fights and be pretty good. Like I wouldn't touch Mohammad Yahya fight. I wouldn't touch basically. I wouldn't touch Mackenzie Dern fight or Brenner fight. You stay away from those 3 and you do a pretty good lean on a couple of props here and there, you could come out insanely profitable on a long shot parlay. So yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for me. I'm gonna get you guys this episode posted out and edited. It's literally like 8 a.m. as I'm wrapping up this recording. I literally started at like 4 a.m. I feel like, but I took a break because we had technical difficulties and my laptop died and stuff like that. So it's just been a hassle and a crazy whirlwind of a weekend. The fights are about to start here in about 2 hours, so I gotta hurry up, wrap this up, get it posted, edit out to you guys, and finish and submitted. And I'll catch you guys in the next card. We will see you guys next weekend, I believe. We will double check real quick for you guys. Let me look. We're currently on, where are we? Why is it not? Oh, we are currently on Sandhagen Nurmagomedov, and we do have a fight next week. So the next 2 cards, actually, I think there's a break in between, but there's a card next weekend, another UFC Fight Night at the Apex, which is Vera, Sergey Spivak, which not the sexiest card all the way around so far from what I'm looking at. An okay fight night, try to make a little bit of money, but a main event that's not really sexy. And then I believe the next numbered card will be UFC 305, which will be taking place after Dana White's Contender Series. Yeah. Oh, I guess August 17th. So yeah, we have back-to-back cards, so 3 cards in a row. So yeah, we still have a couple weekends ahead of us, and we can basically get started on you because we know who's going to be on that card so far. I think it's already finished out and complete. By the way, we're already rolling with Adesanya by knockout. Props are already out. But yeah, 3 straight weekends of cards here. And then there's supposed to be a UFC Fight Night on 8/24, but it's not even an official name. There's not even anybody on the card. There's literally 1 fight on the card in the prelims and no main card. So, I mean, that's 4 weekends in a row, right? And then we have a couple of weekends of Dana White's Contender Series. And then we have Gilbert Burns versus Sean Brady Fight Night. Oof. And UFC Noche would be here before we know it with O'Malley, Marab, UFC Fight Night in Paris, and then Victoria and Holloway all the way at 308, which is not until October. I mean, this is probably going to go down as the best freaking combat sports here in the history of MMA and the history of UFC. And so far, the main card on UFC 308 is nuts. From what's confirmed, we got Topuria, Max Holloway, Whitaker, Hamzat, Cyril Gane, Alexander Volkov, Magomed Ankalaev versus Alexander Rakic. So absolutely nuts there. But I'm rambling on. I'm looking so far into the distant future. We just gotta take it weekend by weekend, baby steps, slowly but surely. We will get there. Yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. Like, comment, subscribe. What do you guys think of my picks? What are your guys' picks? What do you disagree with? What do you agree with? I would love to hear your thoughts. Enter the giveaway. Subscribe. Follow me on Instagram or Twitter. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.